health. So how to be healthy is a major question for most people, and we need to focus on the awareness and to promote healthy eating habits. The major issue is most of us, when we are eating, we are concerned about how tasty the food is, but most of the times how nutritious the food is ignored. We need to be aware and make people aware about how much nutritional value does the food have, what we are taking. And this is the focus of the deliberation from all the medical fraternity who is here, who are the part of this deliberation, who are making efforts and making awareness, making people aware about the importance of nutrition for our health. To start the proceedings, I would request Dr. Umesh Kapil, who is Professor, Department of Epidemiology, Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, New Delhi. Dr. Kapil is an academician and educationist par excellence. He has more than 4 decades of experience in research and teaching. He has won a number of awards. He is the member of National Task Force, ICMR, and has won national awards for the year 1992, BC Srivastav ICMR, National Award for the year 1996, and many other awards. I would request Dr. Umesh Kapil to please come on the dais and make the welcome note. Before we start the proceedings, I would request all the dignitaries present here to stand up for the national anthem.
वो एक लाइन पेपर दे दो.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता. पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा. विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा. तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे.
हम कर देंगे, ये कर देंगे.
गाहे तव जय गाथा. जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता. जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you all. Please be seated. And may I now please request Dr. Umesh Kapil to deliver the welcome note.
Good afternoon to all the dignitaries who have come here to attend the national dissemination and deliberation on FOPL, the front of package label. I would like to give my warm welcome to all the eminent speakers, participants, resource faculties. My special welcome to Professor Shiv Sareen, who has very kindly agreed to deliver a keynote address and to inaugurate this national dissemination consultation. Just a brief about Dr. Sareen is that he is one of the living legend in the country. He has more than 650 publications in the field of hepatology and gastroenterology. He was awarded Padma Bhushan in year 2006, and he has been awarded many international awards in the field of gastroenterology and hepatology. Presently, he is a senior professor and vice chancellor of Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, and he is also presently the president of National Academy of Medical Sciences. Sir, we are most grateful to you for accepting our request. My special welcome to eminent dignitaries who have joined in the offline as well as on virtual mode. We have with us Dr. Saurav Vashne, Director AIMS Devghar. We have Professor Sunita Kishore from Director AIMS Gorakhpur, Dr. Vikas Bhatia, Director BV Nagar, Andhra Pradesh. We have dear friend Dr. Sanjay Rai, who has led the immunization program in this country. All the COVID trials were done under his leadership. We have Dr. Arun Gupta, who has been leading the campaign for promotion of breastfeeding in our country. Sir, we are most grateful to you for joining here. We have Dr. CM Singh. We have Dr. HP Sasdev, who was a former president of Indian Academy of Pediatrics. We have Dr. Shashikant, who is the head of Department of Community Medicine at AIMS. We have Professor Salim Khan from Srinagar. We have Dr. Sanjeev Mishra, Director Jodhpur, AIMS Jodhpur. We have Madam Vandana Shah, who is the Chair of Regional Director of Global Health Advocacy. We have Dr. Sunila Garg, who is the President of Indian Association of Preventive Social Medicine. We have many more. My apologies if I have forgotten chief or any VIP guest over here, but please apologize because of lack of time. We have participants from all over the country, and they all are eminent participants. We have people from Assam, West Bengal, Jammu and Kashmir. We have from Punjab, majority of the states in the country. My request to all of you is please enjoy the scientific deliberations. And if you need any help or assistance from us in making your stay comfortable in Delhi, please do give us a call. We'll be there to help. The main aim of this dissemination workshop or consultation is to disseminate the awareness amongst the medical fraternity about the healthy foods. And we hope that the effort of all of us would make a dent to take the government of India on issuing the strong FOPL guidelines so that we are able to prevent the epidemic of non-communicable disease which is happening in our country. My last request to all the speakers and chairperson is, since it is a 3-hour deliberation, please adhere to the timings, and chairperson should stop the speaker if he is going beyond his mandate. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. Kiran Bharadwaj, please.
Thank you, Dr. Umesh Kapil. And now I would humbly request our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. S.K. Sareen, who is a great personality and his efforts in the field of medical are commendable. He has delivered a number of successful projects. He is Professor of Hepatology and Vice Chancellor, Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences. He was instrumental in setting up this institute, and he has made commendable efforts all these years and specifically during the COVID pandemic. Dr. Sari, please, I would request you to share your valuable words with us.
Thank you, Kiran, and thanks, Dr. Umesh, and the organization, front of package labeling concept to me. There are a few things I would like to add in addition to welcome to all the dignitaries. We all were very fond of using sugar-free and thought that taking sugar-free will decrease the calorie intake. Our very prestigious journal, Gut, showed that taking sugar-free has so much difficulties to our system, but nowhere it is written on the sugar-free. Similarly, many of us are using routinely the packed foods which are stored under different conditions, but they are probably written in such small letters that we are not able to read what are the ingredients and how the packed food has been stored. This was the problem in Paris, in France, for the type of cheese they were doing in late 90s and so. And the type of cheese used was not possible to be tasted by everybody. And the French government therefore came out with several regulations because cheese was the biggest, kind of export quality material from France. That revolutionized the whole concept of packaging, labeling in that part of the world. In India, we all know that the food which we are eating sometimes is not good. As a clinician, I would advise for a few things to be clearly mentioned, and these include the type of and the quantity of fructose on any food. Because the epidemic of fatty liver disease, the epidemic of cirrhosis, gallstones is largely related to our intake of carbohydrates, which are not clearly mentioned. Nowhere it is mentioned also that these kinds of foods can be health hazards for us. We just mention it is fructose, it is glucose, but no details are provided. I see such eminent experts here who are probably going to debate on it. As a gastroenterologist and a liver person, I would say there are two types of people. One are obese and one are healthy, lean and normal weight. A lean person can be metabolically unhealthy or metabolically healthy. An obese person can be metabolically healthy, metabolically unhealthy. So every overweight is not unhealthy. So because of these understandings, in 2020, the nomenclature for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has been changed to metabolic dysfunction associated liver diseases. The MAFLD includes diabetes, it includes overweight. Why I'm telling you these developments, and globally there is now a kind of rage to change the name to metabolically dysfunction associated liver disease. Now, if you have MAFLD, means you have diabetes or you are overweight, small environmental change can make a huge difference. If you are otherwise metabolically healthy, these environmental change will not make a difference. So an MAFLD guy means his father, mother had diabetes. Now he is exposed to nutrients which are harmful. Even small amount of nutrients will make a huge difference. Therefore, in my mind, it must be the food packaging must also include to which category and to what are you supplying. Suppose you are having foods which are having labels this is good for this category, but may be harmful for this category. We have not personalized a large number of food items. We only say sugar, we only say carbohydrate, fats, and proteins and calories. But is that suitable for a person who has a different metabolic profile? So, my first point is foods and food items which you're labeling should have clarity. This is harmful. Like for cigarette is harmful for this. Second part in labeling is should be clarity that fructose or similar foods, like an average normal American student takes about 25 kilograms of fructose in a year. He's a young boy going to the college. He takes so much of fruit juices, so much of colas, Coca-Cola or Pepsi Cola, that in 1 year he ends up with 25 kilograms of fructose. That fructose will lead to all kinds of disorders, but it is nowhere mentioned on the colas or on the food items that this is the quantity and this can happen. So my second point is there should be a possible diagrammatic or a representation on a kind of picturesque presentation that these food items can create this. Then it is your choice. At least you have been educated. My third point, and which I think involving such eminent people from AIMS and Dr. Kapil's efforts, we should be able to prepare some kind of a message, a guideline. NAMS is very grateful to the efforts that all of you are putting in to join and educate, but can we not come out with some kind of concrete suggestions? There was a news item today that wheat and gluten, they can cause obesity. Well, that may or may not be, but certainly millets can decrease the glycemic index and decrease. But it's not mentioned about some food items, they're good qualities. So if you start putting glycemic index, if you start putting how much is a food can change your weight, or you have to some way of putting good and bad and personalized food items for different people might be of great help. I also feel that the education in this direction, I also feel education in this not only to the government authorities but also to all of us is required. In US, a study was conducted, in US, in Europe. This study is called as HELENA, HELENA. HELENA study was done in adolescents between 12.5 to 17.9 years of age. About 10 countries participated. Would you believe when the eating habits were checked and they were asked whether you were looking at the packages and you were looking at the food items, 64% of the young college or school going kids were aware of what they were eating. 36% were not aware. They were just saying the other guy is eating and I'm eating. So this educational material must start from a much younger age than only when you grow up and then you go and buy the groceries. With these some thoughts, changing our attitude and mindset, labeling it so well that good and bad can be differentiated, and educating all of us. With that, I strongly suggest that there should be a kind of beginning of a guideline process by the society and by all the experts. I think it will go a long way. And I do hope if we are convinced, we can convince any policymaker. Thank you, and very kind of you to have invited me and have to use NAMS for this educational activity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for joining, Dr. Shiv Kumar Sareen. And it is very truly said that to eat is a necessity, but to eat intelligently is an art. So now we need to teach people how to eat intelligently. And for the first proceeding, the keynote address, the topic would be evolution of front of package label discussion in India and constraints till date. I would request Dr. Amit Khurana who is Program Director, Food Safety and Toxins, Center for Science and Environment. Here he leads the research and advocacy to push for the necessary change in policy and practice related to animals and environment aspects of antimicrobial resistance. He intervenes at the national, regional, and global level with the focus on solutions that are sustainable to countries of the global south. He also works to push for the initiatives to support organic and natural non-chemical farming and regulating pesticides, as well as towards regulations for marketing of junk foods. Dr. Amit Khurana.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Khurana, please go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. And is the presentation slide visible?
Yes, Dr. Khurana, we are
Okay,
ready from
all right.
our end, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, the organizers, particularly Dr. Kapil and the AIMS Rishikesh team. I think I can just say that I'm quite overwhelmed to see now that more and more number of people from medical fraternity are joining this. I mean, it's been more than 10 years. I'm part of this journey. And that also tells me that why I've been given this topic of evolution of front of pack label discussions in India. So I have been, I would say, fortunately privy to a lot of discussions that have happened with the policymakers across the table with the industry. I'll share to the best I can and see how the group can be benefited by this. I also want to very quickly thank Dr. Serene for the words of wisdom. Clearly, what he mentioned right now is something that we must aim for, but unfortunately, what we have right now is not in the same direction. But nevertheless, if we all are convinced, as he mentioned, we can convince others, and that's very encouraging. So I'll start with the first basic slide. So what we have today to inform the consumer about what a packaged food contains is this. This is nutrition facts label, but it does not tells you how bad the junk food is by design. And of course, it is proven that it is ineffective in its purpose. It's actually, to my understanding, it's an industry strategy applied to keep the consumer confused. It has too many numbers, too much text, requires a good understanding of nutrition science, English, comprehension, mathematical skills, too much to ask for from an Indian consumer. And whatever I have understood in the last 10 years, it's actually suited for compliance, enforcement, and scientific understanding, but clearly not for informing the consumer. And we have been quite late on this as well. I mean, just salt in India became mandatory to be mentioned on packaged foods just late 2020. I mean, there was a notification that came. So it's not that we were quite proactive on this. We were actually quite dilly-dallying on this as well. Now, let me move to the next slide. Now, this is where we need to go if we are serious about protecting consumer health. So in one line, if I may say so, we need a simple and effective way to inform the consumer to help choose healthy food. Simple. Now, what that means is that we need a symbol or a graphic-based nutrient-specific warning label with no or limited text, which is most suited for a country like India because it can transcend the language and literacy barriers. We all know the number of languages we have. We all know that labels are only in English. We also know that literacy is a big barrier. Now, often, I mean, junk food, of course, is called food, but it's actually like it's like tobacco. People needs to be warned about junk foods, and to our understanding, it's actually they are no longer foods. They are factory products. They are concoctions of different material, which does not really have the basic metrics of the food. So no person typically substitutes that as his or her meal for more than, let's say, 2 or 3 occasions. It's clearly not food. It's a factory product. Neither it is produced nor it is consumed like a regular food, and it is highly unbalanced. But most importantly, it is addictive. Addictive like tobacco. We all know salt, sugar, fat, all are addictive, and therefore people need to be warned about it. And that's why the demand for warning label. Now, these are not only foods which are, let's say, these are not only products which are high in salt, sugar, or fat. But these are also low in fiber as well as micronutrients. And the notion, the term HFSS only tells one half of the story. And industry so far has managed to not let the regulator define junk food. And this is despite a very basic, clear description on junk food by the NIN in the NIN guidelines. And then there's this globally evolved understanding of ultra-processed foods, which is also useful. That is another way to look at it. But clearly, HFSS is one half of the story. It does tell you what it has high, what bad ingredients it has in high quantity, but it doesn't tell you what good ingredients it doesn't have. So we have to be mindful there. And these are bad foods. These are not at all good foods, globally indicted for bad health. Strictly regulated in several countries, unlike India. And the same set of companies which are forced to adopt warning labels in countries with strong regulators, but they are allowed to put their interest ahead of the consumer health issues in India. So that's the broad summary of it. Okay, so this is the cover story of Down to Earth that we did. Essentially capturing the 7 years of debate and discussions, delays and dilutions that happened because of the strong and powerful industry. And it is also a clear-cut case or a journey which is marked by 1 step forward and 2 steps backward, if I may say so, due to a weak regulator. And I'm saying it very categorically. We have been extremely disappointed by the way the regulator has behaved so far in the last 7-8 years. Whereas the mandate of the regulator, as per the Act, is say food safety, and that is something which is not adequately addressed so far by the regulator. I will quickly go through some of the graphics that we use in that story. People can take a look at that story on the web. And I'm sorry for the small font here, but this is just a chronology. I'll try to read it out for you. This is just a chronology of events that have happened. So it all started about in 2013 when an expert group was formed by FSSAI, and I'm pleased to share that Dr. Kapil was also part of it. There were other people who are in this room who were part of this group, and it was very clear that we need a certain set of regulations, for example, in the schools, but also we talked about front of pack labeling. And at that time, the global best practice was traffic light, and we talked about traffic light labeling. But that does not mean that is something that we have to follow today, because today the global practice is different. And this was the time, actually, the first dilution happened in this committee, wherein the industry did not let us define, say, junk food. It was talked in terms of HFSS. And from there on, we see that it's now being called as HFSS. And then FSSAI, the report was basically submitted to the High Court. It was a part of a junk food case, a 2010 PIL by an NGO in Delhi. And essentially, the report, when submitted, the court accepted it, and basically it gave to FSSAI to say, now you form guidelines based on this. And FSSAI set up another committee. And that committee, broadly in May 2017, after 2 years, essentially recommended that, yes, it's important that nutritional information should be made easy. That was a broad recommendation. And then FSSAI in 2018 came up with its first draft. And this was the first draft wherein the thresholds were present for front of pack labeling in India, wherein the labeling design was presented, wherein it was very clear that which nutrients would be labeled. It has its shortcomings, but one good thing was that it had good standards. Thresholds were fine, these were stringent, and these were based on WHO CRO's nutrient profiling model. But somehow it was clear that the industry was out in the open, and just 3-4 months down the line, FSSAI set up another committee. And this committee, essentially, to our best of understanding, There are no recommendations or minutes of the discussions of this committee out in the public domain. This committee basically changed a lot of things, and a new draft came in July 2019, which basically changed the nutrients that were to be labeled. And I'll tell you in the subsequent slides. And then sometime in December 2019, CSC tested products, packaged foods and fast foods, not only packaged, but also junk foods, which are sold at fast food outlets, such as burger and pizza, tested for tested for fat as well as salt, and put its result out in the open. It was clear that most of the packaged food would have been labeled red if the draft of FSS 2018 or 19 was to be followed. And that again created a lot of hue and cry, uproar, and the industry was out in open saying, no, we do not need red label. And then immediately after that report, sometime in November 2020, FSSAI in January 2020, FSSAI delinked that front of pack labeling from that 2019 draft. It set up another working group, commissioned another study. So this was now the third committee, or perhaps the fourth committee. And then in January, from January to June 2021, based on that results of commission study and working group standards, deliberations happened at FSSAI among stakeholders, and clearly, and in that deliberations, working group proposed new thresholds, which we think were very much relaxed. And then industry kept on pushing for weak laws. And towards the end, we saw that FSSAI started proposing inclusion of positive nutrients in the FOP label, which was nowhere in the discussion so far. So this basically meant that the ground was set for even a weaker set of labeled format, which was summary indicator, which is essentially a health star rating, or let's say a summary Nutri-Score adopted in few countries in Europe. So this is just to give you a sense on what were the dilutions with respect to nutrients from 2018 to 19. You can see essentially total fat became saturated fat, total sugar became added sugar, but the threshold remained same. It should have reduced. Salt became sodium. We all know sodium is very difficult to understand. We all know added sugar cannot be measured. And we all know that putting saturated fat and not total fat will have its own problems. And it is quite surprising that this kind of dilution was allowed to happen. Nevertheless, strong opposition from civil society groups, which again ultimately led to, as we just discussed, new discussions. So what we now know is that yes, calories, yes, that would be labeled. Total sugar would be labeled, but saturated fat would be labeled and not total fat. And salt may be considered. We have to see. So that's where we are. Some good things, some not so good things. But all in all, the 2018 draft was good in terms of thresholds, but it was not good in terms of the model. As you can see, this is more like a mix of traffic light as well as monochrome GDA model. But the red color was okay. So it had its problems, but it has some good things. So it was very good on thresholds. This is about the study that we did, 2019, essentially highlighted all fast foods or popular junk foods, and correctly so would have been labeled red. And as I mentioned earlier, FSSAI delinked that and set up another committee. This was the result. Essentially, you can see all chips that we tested, namkeens, instant noodles, burgers, fries, they all were high in more or less both salt or fat. And you can see the number of times they were higher when compared to the thresholds proposed by the FSSAI in 2018. Now this slide, again, very sorry about the small font. I never had the time to reconstruct it for this presentation, but just to give you a sense, the latest 2021 working group thresholds, which were proposed, not the latest, but the ones which were proposed between January and June 2021 and discussed, you can see that in many cases, these were several times higher than FSSAI's own thresholds proposed in 2018 and 19. This was actually very hard to imagine, and it was clearly seen that yes, It was under the huge pressure from the industry. But we also know that these were draft standards, and they were final. There was a final report which was submitted, but it is not out. We do not know now. And that is possibly because the plan towards the end in June was changed at the last hour. It was now about not giving thresholds for different categories. It was providing thresholds for two categories. In our view, it was essentially to create a room for summary indicators, but not warning labels. The two categories could also have gone to warning labels, such as those followed in many other countries. But here it was actually meant to create room for summary indicators. Now you can see some more slides just to give you a sense that the thresholds proposed by a working group, the draft ones, actually allowed so many products bypass it. I mean, the threshold was so high that many popular products would by default pass that. And if you see how they were compared with the global standing, again, they were much higher than what were proposed in many countries, such as let's say Chile, Peru, Israel, which follow warning label format, but also higher than when something which was proposed in Canada. And this is something very interesting that we know, that they proposed a separate standards for 1 to 4 years, which clearly tells us that it's actually, that is what it should be, because most of this junk food are actually consumed by the children and that population. But unfortunately, the thresholds are largely, they are not the ones in the picture. I mean, even the thresholds of sear, for example, also have a lot of buffer in them. They are created on the highest value and not really in the lowest value. And we know even the calorie requirements of children are much different from calorie requirements of elderly, of adults, for example, if not elderly. But by and large, the thresholds proposed were higher than their earlier ones. A lot of products were already past green, and they were much higher than the global best practices. And it was really hard to imagine. And then what happened between Jan to June 21 with reference to the labels? I mean, you can see these 4 popular labels. I don't need to tell this group. This is a very august, very aware group about what is happening on FOPL. But just to tell you, despite increasing body of evidence from across the world, favorable on the ground results from countries where a warning label is there, and greater adoption of it in many countries, particularly in recent years, warning labels were not considered. And industry, on the other hand, continued to push for something which is very archaic, which is like a monochrome GDA model. I mean, many of those already right now do it voluntarily. They've been doing it for many years, which is solving no purpose. But the industry kept on pushing. But quite surprisingly, from out of nowhere, at the last hour, summary indicators, both the HSR and the Nutri-Score were pushed, as I just mentioned, and most consumer groups actually very vehemently opposed it, and very rightly so. And then it was decided in June 2021 that a study would be commissioned to understand what is best understood by the Indian people. It was given to IIM Ahmedabad. And now the work of the working group perhaps was no longer required, and the scientific panel was actually asked to develop thresholds again based on 2 categories. So all that historical work again went for a toss. And now we are back to square one on 2 thresholds. So that's what happened with reference to the format labels. Now, let me just go to the last slide, second last slide. So this is about a meeting that happened a couple of weeks ago, right in February 2022, wherein the scientific panel came up with the new thresholds now for two category thresholds, 2 products, foods and beverages. IMA study results were presented. I can't go much into detail of these studies. I'm a part of the committee. But one thing is very, very clear, that it's the health star rating which is being pushed in a much orchestrated way. And this is about stars. I can just tell you, you can take a look at this slide, second column topmost. This is about the stars. So it will, to our understanding, it will do more harm than good. And we are very careful when we say that, as this design has a positive connotation, and that basically means even if it is 1 star, it has a positive connotation. Stars or the World Health on a bad food is actually far from reflecting the true nature of such foods. It's actually the opposite of it. And it is very clear that if it is allowed to happen, then the unhealthy and the bad foods will actually be legalized or get licensed to be sold as good food. And there's a high risk of they being perceived as healthy, as HSR clearly is misleading. So there's a clear big concern here. And besides these are not nutrient specific. It will never let consumer know if a product is high in one or the other ingredient. It will confuse the consumer. What does a 3-star mean? It's actually not meant for warning. It's meant for comparison of products within the same product category. It will not aid to the long-term consumer education because you will never get to know what does this mean, what is high, what is wrong, and that will not let you know what you should eat less and what you can possibly eat more. And of course, it is vulnerable to manipulation due to the element of positive nutrients into it. Only few countries in the world have adopted this. They do voluntarily. And their 5-year review clearly tells us that only a limited proportion of products have them. I mean, maybe about half or less than half. And coupled with the relaxed thresholds, which are now proposed, but I can't tell you the details right now, and a big time gap, which is actually positioned as voluntary and not mandatory, it is clearly an advantage industry and not the consumer health. And this is actually not acceptable. This is something which will be a disaster for the Indian consumer. So what do we need? This is the final slide. What we need is a symbol-based nutrient-specific warning label. Mind you, it should not be about Chile. It should be like Israel. There's a difference. Chile still has high in, it has text. Whereas if you see the Israel one, it has symbols. So you do not need a text here. We know that FSSAI has actually done one of the most popular campaigns on that green dot in a green square, which tell people about vegetarian food. I mean, they know how it works. They have been doing it for other issues also, symbol-based, for fortification. They are doing it for Jaivik food. But why can't they do it here is a big question mark. And then, of course, we need strict limits. And we think such as which are aligned with the WHO CRO or those which were proposed by the FSSAI experts themselves in 2018 or let's say in 2019. I mean, there was a lot of common sense and debate that went into that, into proposing those standards. And those are good. Those are fine to start with. And then, of course, we need salt and not sodium on the front of pack label. Sodium is there on the back of the pack label, and both can complement each other. Front of pack need not repeat the information that is present on back of pack. And we need total sugars, but we do not need total sugars with an RDA more than 50 grams. It cannot happen. And that is the argument which is being talked about. We hear often on and off. And then we need total fat. I mean, some people believe saturated fat should be there, but we think total fat should also be there because it will address to the issues of a larger set of population. And then, of course, calories. But we do not need a voluntary approach and no more delays. So with that, I submit. I hope I have not crossed the time, but I'm really sorry I would not be able to take any questions. I have another meeting in 15 minutes, a CSC meeting. So I would take your leave and maybe just hang around for a minute. That's it. I hope it was useful.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Amit Khurana, for joining us. And now for the next address, I would like to invite the chairperson, Dr. Surekha Kishore, Director and CEO, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Gorakhpur. She is member of National Medical Commission, former Dean Academics, AIMS Rishikesh. She has been former Dean Social Outreach, AIMS Rishikesh, ex-president, Consortium Against Rabies, ex-vice president, Indian Association of PSM, UP, UK. She has 29 years of experience in teaching, training, and research related to medical undergraduates and postgraduates, paramedical students, and non-teaching staff, as well as in the field of functionaries related to health. She's been awarded with many honors and including she's the recipient of the award by Southeast Asia Diabetes Foundation, chaired more than 120 sessions in conferences, and she is reviewer of various national and international journals, life member of various national and international associations. The chairperson, Dr. Vikas Bhatia, Director and CEO, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, BB Nagar, Telangana. He has been the founder, Dean of AIMS Bhubaneswar from the year 2012 till 2019. He started a journal as a chief editor, Indian Journal of Community and Family Medicine. He has served in PGI Chandigarh, UCMS Delhi, and Government Medical College Chandigarh. He has done over 155 publications, authoring 2 books, and publishing 52 funded projects. I would like to invite the speaker, Dr. Sunila Garg, President, Indian Association of Preventive and Social Medicine. She is Professor of Excellence Medicine in Maulana Azad Medical College, National President, IAPSM 2021, National President, OIMAG, Collaborator, FOPL Advisory.
That's good.
And
We all know each other, so it's better.
and I would tell that the keynote address is on front of package labeling and its role in controlling non-communicable diseases.
Thank you, Kiran. And it's been a long time after which we are meeting. We have done several sessions together. And thank you, Dr. Kapil, for having this initiative over here in NAMS. And also, basically, I thank AIMS Rishikesh for having this program and I can see a lot of representatives from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So this is a big initiative, but there is a lot of coincidence. Dr. Vikas is there, Dr. Surekha is there as chairperson, and I'm there as speaker. All 3 of us, we belong to MJMS Sevagram. So that's a big coincidence. I'll say that, and it's a big, not even a coincidence, it's a positive relation. So we are all with the Gandhian thoughts. So that's there. Another correlation was that Dr. Sareen and we have been for more than 2 decades, we have been there at Maulana Azad Medical College out of the 36 years which I spent over there. So that is important. And thank you, Dr. Arun, when we talked for the first time and, bringing, front of package labeling and the role of IAPSM. From that day, I thought that why not we talk with the ministry and have an advisory which has been together, because this is the 4th advisory which we have been bringing out together about what is the role of academic institutions. And, we have got a lot of people who are, contesting for the post of IAPSM, and it's a kind of a correlation which we are having today. But then, I wish best of luck to all of them. But I also, give a message that we must carry the agenda forward, because this is one of the most important agenda with regard to front of package labeling. So we all know as Dr. Sareen started with that there is a role of strong warning labels on unhealthy food products in protecting people's health. So that is one of the important things which we have to remember. And countries like, though, my earlier speaker pointed out that Chile has, not got good labels and all, but in Indian context, we have to think it really differently. What will work best and what will not work best, that is important. Because another thing is that if we all remember that junk food has little to recommend it to our smarter parts of the brains, because when we all are eating, we forget that what we are eating. That is important. Even if it is junk food, it is the taste which matters to us. So that is important part. So to our impulsive side, it is the taste which matters most. So that is important. How many times, the chola bhaturas would have come and people have got the guts to refuse them and all that, no, I'm not going to eat. This has got, kind of, it's a junk food or something like that, because we don't count them. Samosas are there because there is nothing written on them. So that is where we need to look at from that perspective also. So, but then, against the light of, since I'm going to speak on non-communicable diseases, we all know that they are important causes of mortality and morbidity across the globe, because you see there is an ease of access to energy dense, inexpensive processed foods. Some are known, some are not known. And Indian settings, we have got majority of them which are not known as well. And we have got diverse segment of population from north to south, east to west. That is important. And we don't know the nutritive value, particularly of most of them. That is important. But when we all know that when we are coming to the non-communicable disease burden, I will tell you one thing, that basically they are killing, approximately, if I will say, can I just do it, minimize it? Yeah. So as per the NCD monitoring survey, NNMS, which was released in 2020, 2 in 5 adults have got 3 or more risk factors which are related to non-communicable diseases in India. It also states that 1 in 4 adults and 6.2% adolescents. Remember, we are talking of a huge number because we have got approximately 1/4 of our Indian population which belongs to this group, and 6.2% are overweight or obese. 3 out of 10 adults have got raised blood pressure, 3% have got raised blood glucose, and India, number of people with diabetes caused by obesity is expected to rise from 77 million in 2019 to 101 million in 2030. By the way, all of us are aware of the fact that India is the diabetic capital of the world and Delhi is diabetic capital of the country. That is important part to remember. It also shows that 2 in 5 adults and 1 in 4 adolescents are suffering from insufficient physical activity, which has been highlighted more during the pandemic times also. The heavy daily intake of salt was 8 grams for these children. That is important. So we need not talk about sodium, but when we talk about salt, this is the fact. According to WHO, around 58 lakh Indians die every year due to preventive non-communicable diseases. Even as Dr. Arun, these are the things which I referred to your reference. So even as India copes with the ongoing pandemic, that is important part to be remembered, which has strained our existing healthcare systems. The hospitals, we all know across, mine was a 2,000 bedded COVID hospital. So they diverted the resources and capacities to treat infection and non-communicable diseases. And because you see, that is one thing which we cannot afford to ignore. But at the same time, pandemic was also a priority. But that is where, when we talk of health system preparedness, these are the important things which we need to keep into consideration. And global health security is one of the agendas of which Government of India is also a signatory in 2014. The results of latest NFHS survey should come as an eye-opener for policymakers as well as consumers in terms of non-communicable diseases, in terms of obesity and all that. That is important part. Now, the Global Nutrition Report 2021 shows that 2.2 billion adults are overweight or obese, which comprises of almost equal percentage of men and women. Earlier, when we used to visit America, we used to say that, okay, so much of obesity. Now, this is not unknown in Indian settings. We see obesity as a common phenomena in Indian settings, particularly, you see, when you talk to a pediatrician, say so many children, which they see are obese. You see, that's where is the importance of starting from the beginning and addressing these issues. So this issue is rapidly, or the overweight in children is rapidly rising in Indian context. Not just children, obesity in men and women has also increased. The percentage of overweight women went up from 20.6% to 24%, while in men, the number increased from 18.9% to 22.9%. According to NFHS 5, the results have been declared recently. Unhealthy diets and physical inactivities are major risk factors, which is not unknown to us, but then the behavior is difficult to change. That is one thing which is important. And increasing availability of unhealthy foods, some are known, some are not known. That is important part, and I was talking to the mission director also. So we need to look at that, whether we are knowing about all these foods or not. Obesity and NCDs are not only in rise. Please remember that earlier we used to say that this is only a problem of metros, but this is also a problem of rural areas where the food industry has made inroads through the well-oiled marketing strategy, which offers high fat, salt, sugar laden packaged food. So this has left consumers and the nation to suffer both on the health and economic front. So on one hand, it compromises the health, and on second hand is the expenditure which we are doing on that. Now, COVID-induced restrictions, this is what I took from Dr. Arun. That is where work from home, restrictions, social distancing, and all that in many countries, including India, increased the demand for ready-to-make, easily available packaged food, which really increased over a period of time. But accordingly, our physical activity never went to that extent. So that was one thing which was compromised. However, basically the concern is that the unhealthy food options are put before the consumer when there are so many healthy choices which are available. But right from, if we talk from the health sector front, non-health sector front, or from the school front, this is an issue which has to be really enforced upon. And this is where academic institutions under the aegis of IAPSM, or you see IPHA, Public Health Association, is that they can play a critical role in this. And also our comprehensive national nutrition survey, which was, the results were there, they brought out that overweight and obesity is present in 5 to 9 years of children to the tune of 3.7% and adolescents to the tune of 4.8%. Now, if we look at, the global non-communicable diseases targets for the year 2025, target 4 talks about salt intake, and it talks about 30% reduction in the mean population intake of salt or sodium by the year 2025, and mean population recommended intake of 5 gram per day to mean population intake of sodium to about 2 gram per day. That is important. So target 6 talks about adult raised blood pressure. That means 25% reduction or relative reduction in prevalence of raised blood pressure according to the national circumstances. The raised blood pressure is defined as blood pressure systolic and diastolic to the tune of 140/90. Target 7 talks about halt in rise of obesity and diabetes. Adult obesity is, we all know, BMI more than or equivalent to 30 milligram per square meter. And adult diabetes, basically, we know that fasting glucose more than 70 millimoles per liter on medication for the raised blood glucose or with a history of diagnosis of diabetes. These are important parts. So you see, as far as the policy strategies are concerned, we all know that 3 important and increasingly common policy strategies which are recommended by WHO and hold true for Indian front are that we need to have front of package labelings on unhealthy foods or beverages. I will like to say that it should be there on all. So that is how you can decide. Restrictions on marketing these foods to children. The strategies have to be decided countrywide because ours is a different country as compared to when we give an example of Chile or Australia or other countries, and restricting the sales of these products in schools. Like when we talk of there should be no person selling tobacco within 100 meters of the school. So something like that we have to talk about. The consumers need to be provided with clear information about the nutrient profile of the packaged products, depending upon the setting, depending upon the, literacy status, depending upon the, the perceptions. So that is where we need to look at the population profile and drinks while nudging the industry to reformulate their products for the better health of the people. And also, in fact, as per the global health body, front of package labeling works best when it is mandatory and applies to all the packaged products. The label is got to be interpretive in whatever manner the people can understand. It has got to be simplistic, simply visible, and guided by a strong nutrient profile model. That is important. So front of package labeling, we all know, is a tool to promote public health by promoting accurate nutritional information, instrument for marketing and product promotion, and label can reduce the information problem. But again, I said the way the information has got to be given has got to be strategically designed according to the type of population, according to rural or urban profile, according to our people, and their understanding capacity in the innovative forms. Again, one thing which you have to also know that the FOPL provides quick and straightforward information to the consumers, which has already been talked about. And it's a comprehensive policy approach also, which is needed to promote healthy diets and reduces, overweight, obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. Now, what is there behind the labels? Now, front of package labeling regulations represent key public health measure to promote healthier food environments and non-communicable diseases prevention. And this addresses the same thing simultaneously. And existing FOPL systems in nations with high rates of NCDs, warning labels have proven to be effective in changing consumer behavior. But this has not got to be, alone, unless it is supported by policy and program. That is where, the governments need to be involved at each level. Now, warning labels help the consumers quickly and easily identify ultra-processed food and beverage products, hereinafter to be referred as UPP, high in sugar, salt, and fat, or high in sugar, sodium, and fat. And again, we all know that the nutrients of concern are saturated, trans fat, sugar, and salt. So these are there's a large body of evidence of linking these nutrients to the non-communicable diseases. Again, we all know that it is very, very important to mandatorily declare the energy, trans fat, or the total fat, total sugar, and salt with a percentage according a contribution to the recommended daily allowance on the front of pack label. You can see that part 1 talks about energy, total fat, trans fat, total sugar, and salt per serve, and per serving percentage contribution to recommended daily allowance is given in part 1 and part 2, as it is obvious, basically in this first diagram. And the second diagram talks about that wherever it is higher, you make it as red. The calculation criteria per serve percentage Contribution to recommended daily allowance is based on 2000 kilocalories energy, 67 grams of total fat, 2 grams of trans fat, 50 grams of sugar, and 5 grams of sodium chloride requirement of adult per day. And if the high fat, sugar or salt should be colored per day, if we know that, given an example, that energy from total sugar is more than 10% of the energy provided of the 100 grams of per 100 ml of the product. And also you see, if the energy kilocalories from trans fat is more than 1% of the energy provided by 100 grams per 100 ml of the product. So this information is not difficult to teach to the children. So if the school teachers or under the education program, we are telling that if this is right, red in color, this is something simpler to understand. This you can teach to the frontline workers also. This you can teach to out of school children also. But then this message has to go to the all healthcare providers, you see, under the ages of, I'll say that all the academic institutions. So it has got to be a multidisciplinary approach. So recently, ultra processed foods industry has shifted the stance from outright opposing FOPL system to seeking to weaken the policy standards. You see, the food industry is also very strong. We should not underestimate them. I remember in 2011, when Dr. Thakur was there in WHO, we had a meeting, and on the policy front, we were strong. But you see, from the industry front, we realized that it is not very easy to have a dialogue. They will find out, different ways in order to, skip, these different kinds of front of package labeling. Now, where the government has already approved FOPL, the industry is trying to delay the implementation and avoid compliance through multiple tactics. In 2021, the Global Health Advocacy Incubator, that is GHI, monitored this industry and attempts to weaken the FOPL standards in 20 geographies. This report highlights the different actions and narratives by the industry. Now, so there are 4 main strategies the corporate playback is composed of. One is protect this industry's reputation and brands through corporate washing. I'm going to come one by one to this. Influence policies through multilateral bodies to delay implementation and threaten countries with legal and economic concerns. They will also say that there are legal implications if you do this. And this is how we are carried away by this part from the strong industry's narration. Divert attention from the corporate responsibility, which is also one of their responsibilities, to pay attention to non-communicable diseases. They will say that no, there is going to be damage to the environment, and then human health, to blame individuals for their behavior. So they'll say it is the behavior of the individual which is responsible. How come corporate sector is responsible for this? And imply their products contribute to health, the environment and society, while blocking the development and implementation of healthy food policies. So you see, as for the first part is concerned, when I talked about, protect the UPP industry's reputation and brands through corporate washing. So basically there were different arguments. They're using different symbols also by the industry to position and protect its commercial and financial performance. The industry performs multiple brand washing activities that capitalizes on social, economic, nutritional, health, gender, cultural, and environmental causes. And you can see that basically in Israel, this UPP-friendly shelf dispensers strategically are designed to hide or sabotage this front of package label, so that, people who are going there, they will just pick up this, they don't bother to read what is there on the labels. So, whether people are aware of it or not aware of it, when it comes to picking up the foods, they just forget to do the reading. So this is how the industrial tactic is going to be there. Then again, the second part was there, that we talk about influence the policy through multilateral bodies to delay implementation and threaten countries with legal and economic concerns. This is by co-opting multilateral bodies at global, regional, and local levels. This is how the industry is strong. They will co-opt, that this is the recommendation of, this body at this level. So, and then, they will say that that's how the industry is guaranteeing normative framework and context that allows to expand its agro business and avoid and weaken regulations around healthy food policies. This is how, again, we are diverted from that. And the third part talks about that even though corporate practices have globally shaped unhealthy food environments, the industry fails to take responsibility for the environmental and human health damage which they cause. While promoting freedom of choice, arguments publicly, corporations that allay the burden of NCDs on individuals, avoid the liability, and challenge public health laws and policies worldwide in order to protect their own industry. Remember, every time I'm going to talk about that food industry or any industry, wherever you are going to challenge them, first interest is going to be their own. And remember, they're very strong people. The industry assigns unique attributes to, ultra processed foods to build loyalty and guarantee consumption over time and special attention on children. They will say that. To highlight these food product characteristics, companies often use the relationships and multiple tactics to cause doubts and confusion around the evidence and effectiveness of public health measures. So instead of going straight, they will go round and round and round, fix a meeting upon second meeting. And this is what is happening since the year 2011, while we had a committee with WHO. So you can see that Dr. Sareen made a mention of Coca-Cola, but let's see how the evidence is going to be there. It's one of the, Coca-Cola South Africa, one of the biggest sugar sweetened beverages companies, ironically, it has committed to tackling NCDs, particularly obesity, to create healthier food and more sustainable environments. The results are there to be seen. So that is one thing which we need to look upon. And then Chile case study, I'm not going to highlight because the paper has already been published in PLOS One. And you see the marking showed that conclusion of this study was that the purchase of high-end beverages significantly declined following implementation of Chile's law of food labeling and advertisement. That means if the laws are strict, they work. That is important part to remember, but it is upon the countries, and countries like India, where the implementation is going to be much more challenging. Now, when we come to FSI regulations in 2011, we know that it has undertaken the task of revision of existing package and labeling regulations in 2011, and it has split into 3 separate regulations. Number 1 is draft package labeling regulations, draft advertisement and claim regulations, and draft labeling regulation. These are the 3 components, and it is aimed at establishing requirements for labeling of pre-packaged foods to provide simple, easy to understand information to the consumers and facilitate them in making healthier food choices. This is the basic objective of FSI. And prescribed requirement for front of package labeling, which includes labeling of energy, trans fat, total sugar, and salt on front of package labeling, along with their percentage contribution to recommended daily allowance, along with this HFSS labeling. So this is how it has got to be there. And this was there issued in 2018 as well. So mandatory declaration of what I've already mentioned. And on the left side is the table which already shows you in terms of, the per serving, how much is the energy, protein, carbohydrate, sugar, and all that. But most important is apart from the energy, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, salt, that is important part. But when we look at this FOPL initiative in India, basically in 2018, we had got the draft regulations for front of pack labeling and made them available to public online. It considered different symbols. In philosophy, it was very good, nutrient profiling models, and it proposed a format which was based on nutrient cutoffs and all that. But where it went wrong, somewhere, this is also got to be industry driven, which we need to see in mind, that how you see our own professional bodies are associated, or food safety standards of India, when we talked about, so this is where we talk of this, how primarily we need to see that, it takes a lot of time. So that is where the integrated efforts are required from our front as well. So in 2011, we had multiple discussions with FSSAI, probably due to pressure from the industry. In 2020, again, the discussions have been revived in a positive way, and working group is working on the development of nutritional cutoffs and label designs. In 2021, FSSAI is closing on FOPL system, and we as a public health community should advocate for strong interpretive FOPL in India, which is need-based, which is again, the position-based, which is again population-based, literacy-based, to reduce the mortality and morbidity from non-communicable diseases. The proposed labeling format appears to be aimed only at individuals who are literate and who are nutritionally aware, which is a small segment of our population. Almost a quarter of our Indian population is illiterate. Therefore, pictorial representation will allow better engagement and understanding. And that therefore is the role of community medicine or public health departments, which play a critical role in understanding and reaching to the communities. It is crucial to have positive participation from the food industry. Unfortunately, Indian food industries have expressed many concerns over the proposed format, especially using the color red, as it indicates danger. which to our mind is not so, and it would dissuade consumers from their product. And they argue that positive and voluntary labeling is accepted in many countries and should be encouraged in India, which will never see the light of the day. I feel that. Whereas the need of the hour is mandatory front of pack labeling using the consumers and stakeholders' inputs. So, basically we can see that what are the other areas which is responsible for, children as targets, So another area where we see responsible society and government as a concerned policy maker is to intervene, is to scan what is being dished out to children. Because you will see most of the advertisements on the TV with regard to foods are targeting at children. Bus 2 minute Maggie, bus 2 minute, we talk of different foods. So this is food industry is very smart. It's a profit making industry. So one of the softer targets are parents and children as well. So according to various reports, the fast food industry is increasingly eyeing children as their potential future consumers, which has been not only future, they are present consumers as well, with kids seeing ads as and when you see they are young. So that means even a 2-year-old child also sees that ad and also can, force upon to the parents as well. Now, children now see almost 33% more fast food TV ads as they did about 6 to 7 years ago. And while they were preschoolers, they see 21% more, which is alarming. So over a period of time, this has gone up. Measures such as mandatory FOPL labeling and marketing restrictions are a few solutions that can address diet-related disease epidemics, and world over the countries are prioritizing such actions. And India is also in the process of taking a step in this direction to build a nutrition secure and healthier future. Now, what is the way forward? Now, way forward is front of pack labeling supported by public education of both adults and children for nutritional literacy across the country, across rural and urban or urban slum areas. Front of package labeling should be framed as per the consumption practices of individual country. There is a need to generate, awareness, sorry for the spell mistake. And there's a need to generate awareness about the critical indicators like color, size, taste, flavor, nutrition, level, and calories for analyzing the food safety and quality. Good publicity in social and print media to emphasize the importance of nutrition and front of package labeling in regular food choices. The role of professional associations like IAPSM, Epidemiology Foundation of India, Indian Public Health Association, Non-Communicable Disease Association, IAP, Association of Family Care Physicians of India, and WHO is crucial in form of having a dialogue, and not only a dialogue, the repeated dialogues with the country and issuing the advisory to Government of India and NITI Aayog, which should be regularly enforced. So that is how we will be able to bring a change and address non-communicable diseases. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sunila Garg, for highlighting some of the very, very important aspects which are, we say, after a pandemic of COVID, we say this is, we always say is always ongoing epidemic, lifestyle epidemic, or food habits also part of the eating habits are also part of our lifestyle. And while you were telling about the Sevagram connection, it also reminded me one thing, that around 2000, nearly 20 years back, there was a national conference which was of IAPSM. Exactly, I do not remember the year. It was around 2000, where national conference was organized. That was at Sevagram.
Yeah.
And that time there is initially, they started with for young faculty, they were supporting about 5,000 rupees. And that was by the Ford Foundation. In that conference, I submitted one proposal, and that was on junk food. And you believe me, the judges over there, they say, Dr. Saab, what are you talking? Why you are talking about this? That was in 2000. They say, this is the change which you will see after some time. You see, we are struggling, we are still fighting with malnutrition, undernutrition, I'll say not malnutrition,
Yes.
undernutrition. And why you are bringing this aspect? Anyhow, I went ahead and I'm just sharing one important finding because this is being discussed now. When I went back to Chandigarh, I did one study with the DST sport in all the government schools and private schools of Chandigarh. That was in 2003 and 4. And that included adolescents. I still have a very big report, but then I joined UNICEF and then I could not publish immediately. I just, while you were presenting, so it reminded me, I tell you, that time I didn't have the camera and the pizzas, that was in Chandigarh. Because what was happening in Chandigarh is the highest per capita income in the country, is something which will go down over the years to the villages in the country. So the change was very much visible at that time, even in 2003 and 4. So in 113 schools, I did study, and that was on the junk food. And I used to go to schools, all the schools I visited, and created, and then did the intervention and change the menu of the schools. Because every school, whether within the school, whether they're convent or highly admired schools, admired in the sense that people which are very keen to join, will have a canteen or something like this. And they will, what do they serve? The students were crazy about pizzas and noodles and even the pakoras and samosas and patties and cold drinks. And the tiffin which is made, given by the mother, they will bring it back and they will not use it. I have a big report. I'm just give you one finding. What was happening was in those schools, adolescent from the rural areas, 9% were overweight that time in 2000. 8% were overweight in urban areas and 14.8 were in the convent schools or private schools, where usually the higher socioeconomic group children they go. And the fast food preference was 58.8% by the adolescent that time. And one of the two items which they really preferred was around 25% was pizzas and noodles. Then we did intervention, and we found that after educating them, initially their knowledge about the various diseases which can occur because of the overweight or obesity was only 30%. We prepared educational material and then they increased to 90%, a lot of information. And then I went to AIIMS Bhubaneswar. Over the years I was working, and this FHS study, which was done, multicentric study supported by ICMR, that was to be done in the tribal areas. And because it is a predominantly tribal community there, and we did there. And one of the areas where we went, we found that the random blood sugar level, the triglyceride level, TG levels, and cholesterol levels, which we measured, and that from there we used to send to the Hyderabad that time. And the per capita income of that area was only 150 rupees. They were primarily agriculture based and totally disconnected with the world. And then we did in another tribal area, which was close to the Cuttack. Cuttack is like a bit of industrial, and there were a lot of workers and they were working in the industries. Their income was 400 rupees per. And the percentage increase, if we compare odds ratio, or we compare how much was the change in the RBS, in triglycerides and cholesterol, it was 7 to 8 times higher. The same kind of community with a similar kind of background, when their socioeconomic state income increases, and they start going from adapting to the modern ways, they feel that eating this kind of food or consuming Coke is considered to be a very important. So we need to really educate our communities. And now you go to any part of India, any village in India, one thing you will find in remotest part is the Coke and the chips. But what you do not find anywhere in the world, in the country, many a times is the ORS, which is a life-saving. Why we are not able to provide ORS in every village at any time? And the Cokes and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and chips are available at every corner in the country. So this is all market driven. We need to really understand And the workshop which we have started and national level deliberation going on, I want to congratulate the group which is really working on this and highlighting, and now we have started working when the diabetes and hypertension is already so high, 20%, 25%. And you know, a lot of change, even if you go to the tribal areas or remote parts of the country, this has really started affecting. And I really feel that when we make new aims or new hospitals, most of the beds will be occupied by the complications of these 2-3 diseases, rather than helping in more any other diseases. So they will be the one who will be occupying the most of the beds. So it really needs a national level attention and a very high level of advocacy. And this is another war which we have to fight, and we have to work together in this direction. Thank you very much, Dr. Sunila, for a very nice presentation. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And it reminded me of a quote which I just read, that families which eat 5 days of meals together, the divorces are much less than families which eat only 2 days of meals together. So that's the advantage also from a social front. Also, we need to eat home-based food. We need to promote the healthy foods. We need to again look at our geographies. And as has been pointed out, as the access goes on increasing to the the modern lifestyle, the access to our TV channels, etc., also goes on increasing. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And now for the next session, the topic is key pillars for effective front of package labeling, nutrition profile, and label design. The chairpersons I would like to request are Dr. Sanjeev Misra. He is Director and CEO, AIMS Jodhpur. And he has a tremendous contribution in his field. The next chairperson, Dr. Saurabh Varshney, Executive Director, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Devghar, Jharkhand. And the speaker, Dr. Sanjay K. Rai, President, Indian Public Health Association, who has given his tremendous efforts in developing the vaccine for COVID-19 in India.
Hello. In the meantime, I think Dr. Rai is arranging the slides.
Insert new.
I think I'm not a directly connected public health person. Hello. I'm not a true sense of public health person, but yes, I am concerned with health. And as an institute head and policy making, and contribution of our institute as an AIMS, we stand here and to understand it. As happens in any new research hypothesis or problem, we have a standard training that we go with: introduction, justification, material method, results, outcome, and then the action plan. I think I was going through the program. This program is so well drafted that we started with the introduction. The first speaker just briefed about how the concept came, the evolution, why we started thinking 2013-14 about the FOPL. And then it was followed by the justification just mentioned by Professor Sunila, that why it is important to think about FOPL. We have to think about the health of the country, children, even adolescent, adult, and I will say even genetic health also. It is equally important. Health is an ongoing journey through the ages. Then third concept, what I think Dr. Rai is going to talk about is a part like material methods. What are the key pillars? That how we are going to have the real idea of the parameters, that what the problem is. And I think based on that material method, we'll have an outcome or result. And the last speaker, which has been proposed today, is going to talk about the action plan. So I think it's a full research methodology journey we're going to have today on FOPL. So I'll invite, I think Professor Sanjeev Misra sir has joined us. Sir, if you'd like to say something, please.
Thank you, Professor Varshney. I think it's a
thank Professor Dinesh Kapil for asking us to be part of this. It's a very important issue. And as Dr. Vaishnav said, that I think not the slides are there, we should be listening to Professor Rai. We are not the teachers to talk on this, but we will give our support to it in a full way so that takes shape and the message gets disseminated across. I think because I heard Professor Garg and then also the views of Professor Bhatia, and I think the entire program is so interesting that it will be a pleasure listening to Professor Rai. If he's ready with the slides, over to him to give his keynote lecture. Professor Sanjay Rai.
Thank you, chairpersons, and thank you very much. A very good afternoon, all the dignitaries on the dais, Professor Vaishnav, Professor Sanjeev Misra, of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank organizers, especially AIMS Rishikesh and National Academy of Medical Sciences, for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. All previous speakers, Dr. Sunila Garg and others, they have made my task very easy. Almost they have covered all aspects of FOPL, either why we need FOPL or what are the various type of FOPL, etc. So definitely I'm not going to repeat the same thing here. If you see the evolution of the humankind, our ancestors, they used to prepare food for themselves. So they had complete knowledge about their own food, what they are eating. But gradually with the evolution, what happened? We shifted from own food to self-made food to others made food, and then factory-made food, ready-to-eat food, etc. So that is the ultra-processed food. We all know this ultra-processed food has become abundant in our food chain system. Everywhere, developing country, developed country, it's your rural area, urban area. Dr. Bhatia just mentioned that when in 2000, around 2020, he discussed about this processed food. That time, everybody objected, what are you talking? But now this is the reality. This is the history of your processed food, and it's not the recent phenomena. Although in last 10-20 years, it's a very fast growing industry. But even during this British time, this is started. And all over globe, the consumption of this energy dense and nutrient poor food and beverages has escalated rates of diet-related non-communicable diseases. We all know that majority of these non-communicable diseases, the death due to this, especially the premature deaths, are preventable deaths. But this is happening all over. What Dr. Sunila mentioned about the effect of all these foods on non-communicable disease and all these behavioral-related diseases. Also, international agencies, UN agencies, they have concern about, so they have framed some guidelines also related to all these food related guidelines, including FOPL. So I'm not going to discuss the importance of FOPL. All previous speakers, they discussed about the importance of FOPL. So definitely I'm not going to cover this. PAHO, Pan-American Health Organization, published a report highlighting the relevance of front of package labeling as a policy tool for the prevention of non-communicable disease, demonstrating further support to this regulatory intervention. So already they have published various reports. There are national guidelines, international guidelines. Our country also having national guidelines published in 2011. So already there are a few guidelines, but the problem is the implementation of these guidelines. Interpretation, not only implementation, even the interpretation of these guidelines. Breastfeeding Promotion Network of India, IAP, Indian Association of Pediatrics, and Public Health Association. It's not only Indian Public Health Association, IAPSM and IPHA, both are in favor of this FOPL, and we had several discussions in past also. We have already sent letter to our health minister and health ministry along with IAP and BPNI. Dr. Arun Gupta, he took lead in this, and last year, if I recall correctly, almost a year ago, we sent letter, and last letter we sent to Dr. Mandvi, Mr. Mandvi, also our current health minister. So we have already shared letter related to FOPL. So it's not a new story, although Dr. Sunila Garg has covered about the NCD, but see, definitely there is a shift from communicable disease to non-communicable disease, and food, what we are eating is one of the major factor responsible for it. Like she mentioned about the India is a diabetic capital. So all non-communicable disease, they are rising, not only in this country, even if you see the global picture also, it's a developed country, developing country, almost developed country, they have non-communicable disease, almost completely, it's a negligible amount of contribution in deaths. So it's mainly non-communicable disease, sorry. It's not the communicable disease. And in developing country also, this non-communicable disease, they are replacing mortality in both premature mortality, overall mortality, and morbidity due to non-communicable diseases in rise. This is over the trend in the packed junk food sales by category. If you see from 2006 to 2019, almost all part of the world is this figure is from the Asian countries. So in India, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, everywhere it's a rising trend. All type of either confectionery or savory snacks, sweet snacks, cakes and patties. So it's a on rise. Now, if you compare with China, no doubt, there are many countries like Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Cambodia. They are at the lower level. If you compare the gram per capita per day consumption of these foods, but the rising trend, we are seeing rising trends everywhere. India, if you see, no doubt rising trend, and rising trend not on one part, but either sweet snacks, savory snacks, confectionery, cakes and patties. So in almost in all, and it's a 400 times increase from 300 to 400 times in, percentage increase, 3 to 4 times increase in the level in from 2006 to 2019. India trend in sugar sweetened beverages sales by category from again 2006 to 2009. So again, it's an increasing trend. So the aim of, although covered by many speakers, the main of this FOPL is to help consumers make healthier choice, to improve dietary intake and reduce diet-related non-communicable disease. This is one of the main aim of FOPL. And an additional aim is for FOPL to stimulate healthier food production and product reformulation. So not at the consumer level, even at the production level, we want to make changes through this FOPL. This is the pathway of your effect of FOPL, both at consumer level and also at the production level. So consumer and producer at both level. Like if you see at the consumer level, nutritional information is quick and easy to assess, understand and use. If your consumer, if all this information, if this is in under stable form, then definitely that will help in taking a right decision. So that will increase your knowledge. So consumer knowledge will increase related to various food items and attitude about the nutritional and health. So if you are increasing knowledge through FOPL, then definitely your overall behavior related to your health and food related behavior, that will improve. That will lead to your increase in the consumer understanding and use of front of package food labeling. And then this will provide you better informed consumers, so then they can take a right decision. Currently, majority of us don't know what is really the nutrition substance inside the packet. We know the taste of all this food material, but majority of times we don't know. Same at the producer level. If we are implementing the front of level packaging, producer knowledge and attitude will change. This stimulate healthier product development, stimulate reformulation of the food products. It's a definitely business driven strategy. So if your consumers are aware, they have to change all this. And then relatively more healthier packed food on the market, they will make this available. So overall, this will lead to your consumer purchase healthier food and quality of food. So your consumer will be the best informed person in that situation. So the take home message is that this label should be, FOPL should be appropriate. What is the appropriate label? Everybody has already discussed this. The color, pictorial form, all these. So this is call for action for the effective FOPL in India. FOPL is an effective means for promoting healthier lives and protecting the public health. It should be mandatory. Although as per our guidelines, Government of India guidelines and many international guidelines, it's mandatory, but it's not in the best form. FOPL should be based on solid evidence of the nutritional cutoff, primarily focusing on the salt, sugar, and fat, preferably WHO zero nutritional cutoff for this reason. And this already covered by Dr. Sunila Garg also. About the level design, everybody goes. So the take-home message again is, it's a time to use a strong warning label on unhealthy food products in protecting people's health. And this way, we can save many lives. There are many life-saving intervention, public health intervention, including vaccination, etc. So this could be one of the best public health intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. I think you have covered it in a very allotted time, within allotted time. It gives time for discussion. Any comment, any query from any audience? Okay. If there are no comments, I'll just make 3 points I remember, which are not exactly the scientific statement, but it is very common learning. As Professor Sunil left with the last note, I remember that there was a saying, the family which eats together stays together. Now I was talking about divorce, so I think divorce is the experiment, but the family which eats together stays together. That is a known, and when you are sitting on a same table eating together, you will always eat the healthy food. You will not be using the junk food there. I think that tradition which was earlier should be revived. Second, we have to understand that we eat to live, we don't live to eat. So that is also very, very important in the younger generation, because they overeat, obesity and all these things, that is also a concern. And third, I think we are finding a gap between a palatable food and healthy food. Usually the younger generation shifting to these fast food and all these packed food because of the palatability. And if we try to focus also about health issue, that healthy food should be also made palatable. So that will take because if when we're talking about, Professor Bhatia was talking about the school canteens, if you take out those fast food, we have to substitute that with some healthy palatable food. Then only you can take them off. Simply taking out is not a solution, what I feel.
Definitely.
And it is that when you are eating, you have to listen to both dil and dimag. So that should be a training, that you have to understand that you are thinking by heart also and by mind also and brain also what is the right food. I think it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining Dr. Sanjeev Misra, Dr. Saurabh Varshney, and Dr. Sanjay Rai. And the next session, the topic for this would be call for action for an effective front of package label, role of public health associator. And I would request the chairperson, Dr. Chandramani Singh, Professor and Head Community Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Patna. He is Vice President, IPHA, has 22 years of teaching and research experience and has conducted all 3 phases of co-vaccine trial. I would request speaker, Dr. J.S. Thakur. He is President, World NCD Federation, Professor, Department of Community Medicine and School of Public Health, Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, PGIMER, Chandigarh. His area of interest is non-communicable diseases.
So thank you very much and very good afternoon to, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you very much. So, but the chairman, at the outset, I am really thankful to Professor Umesh Kapil and Pradeep Agarwal for inviting me to this very important meeting. I think my task had been made easy by the previous speakers. And so I'll be speaking call for action for an effective front of package level and what is the role of public health associations. During this presentation, after covering a little background, I'll talk a little bit about regulatory framework, the role of public health associations. I'll take World NCD Federation as a case study and also some case studies from other countries. We all know that diet is a major risk factor for non-communicable diseases, and poor diet account for an estimated 11.3 million deaths compared with the other risk factors like physical activity, tobacco, and alcohol and the drug use. And we all know that unhealthy diet is a preventable risk factors, and individual and the population should limit total calories, saturated and trans fat, sugar and salt. And we all know that excessive consumption of sugar, fat, and sodium is a public health problem associated with all kind of non-communicable diseases, which has been already covered. I'm bringing another dimension to FOPL. This is the summary of key outcome of our research in Punjab, which pointed towards a ecological crisis due to chemical toxicity. In our country, we have, we are an agrarian society, so large amount of pesticides are being used. We have the problem of heavy metals. We also have the problem of the untreated effluent, and this is all present, in Punjab. And these findings are based on our work for air quality in Punjab, the studies of 5 major wastewaters in Punjab, and we are now leading a big multi-centric study on exposure and health effects of pesticide on Indian population, which is going on in 5 states. So I would say that we have polluted air due to stubble burning and unregulated emission from industry, the polluted water with the chemicals and the pesticide. So it has led to the polluted soil with pesticide and chemicals, and leading to the toxic food chain, decreased nutritional content in food, and adverse health effects. We have seen that, the water in Punjab have heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, chromium, mercury, and also at the same time a cocktail of pesticides, that is the organophosphorus and organochlorine. I'm sure that since morning, I have not heard that chemical toxicity is also a very important issue in our country, and all these toxins are entering into the food chain. And this is based on our work that, our water is toxic and this toxic soil is toxic. So whatever we are producing in the form of vegetables or fruits, they have also toxins in it. So this is the, another dimension which is very, very important in Indian setting. Now, all the previous speakers, they have emphasized that, it is high time that we should act. And because the rate of sale of growth of ultra processed food has increased over a period of time, our market claims, and consumer and the industry, they are using different dubious means to promote their product. Now, we have heard about type of these FOPL, and I need not to go into detail, but we have nutrient specific, we have summary indicators, we have food group information. There are certain countries which has, mandatory levels on food, packaged foods, and Finland has been one which has done it quite earlier. Iran, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Israel, Ecuador, Chile, Mexico. So all these countries, they have a mandatory level. I would say that it is a journey to nowhere. Many years of delays, several committees, goals, many dilutions, industry pressure continues. What front of package labeling is still awaited, because the ministry has to notify it. The notification is yet to be issued. Now, there are key highlights from the FSI's recent update, and the objective of producing, they are focusing now more on health star rating, and which has come out as the recommended FOPL format for Indian consumers. So this is the format which is being recommended. Now, this is just an example that we are eating these biscuits, these chips are very common, right? And this is the current system of packaging. And in the proposed packaging, we will have these stars, right? And so this is what is being proposed. Now, coming to the topic which has been specifically assigned to me, that what is the role of public health associations. So we, have a public health association in the country. This World Density Federation is working at a global level. And, in the national association, we have Indian Public Health Association, Indian Association of Preventive and Social Medicine, Public Health Foundation of India, Indian Society for Malaria and Other Non-Communicable Diseases, Indian Epidemiological Association, Epidemiology Foundation of India, and Indian Medical Association. They are also an important stakeholder. Now, if we see, the role of these public health association is very, very important. And, we really need to engage with the multiple stakeholders. We have seen and listened since morning that there are many stakeholders which are there. So then advocacy meeting, and this is one kind of meeting which is advocacy meeting with the key stakeholders, consortia working for, all these associations, they should not only organize meeting, but should come up with the concrete call for action, which can be, signed by all these professional association and can be given to the government as a tool for, bringing this front of pack labeling into focus. I'm happy to share with you that we in the past have called for action for NCD in 2011 when I was in WHO. And later we have called for action again during the sideline of World NCD Congress in 2017, which is a global call for action for NCD. So this type of documents, they work as a tool for advocacy. Then training of healthcare workers, and also to include the importance in the medical curriculum about the FOPL. And we should, as a professional, we should also check for the accuracy of labeling and better presentation of FOL. Then empowering consumers to make healthy choice. As a consumer, we should also, educate the consumer that they should see all the labels which are there on the food. And effort to catch children young. I think children is one of the audience which is most important, and they should be made aware. I'm happy to share that we have developed an accreditation system for promoting schools in Chandigarh, where schools are categorized into platinum, gold, silver, and bronze, depending upon the standards. And the standards are also pertaining to the diet and non-availability of junk food in the school canteens. The FSI has also given this Eat Right India initiative, and here this is Eat Healthy and Eat Safe are the main component, and this Eat Safe is very, very important. Now coming to the case study, which I'll share that how we are doing it in World NCD Federation. World NCD Federation is a professional association working for global agenda for non-communicable diseases. It promotes front of pack labeling and by health promotion in different setting and multi-sectoral participation. We have our publications also, and recently we have come up with the 3 Center of Excellence, Center of Excellence in Evidence-Based Research, Center of Implementation Sciences and Research, and Center of Sustainable Development, Health and Wellness. And this is the website which is there. We have recently initiated this Global Health and Wellness Initiative with the theme Play, Laugh and Grow. And the Indian version is Khelo, Haso or Hasao, Bado or Badao India. This Khelo component basically is for promotion of physical activity and healthy diet. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the World NCD Federation, IPHA and IAPSM are partner, and in our meeting, we jointly endorse this, and Dr. Sanjay Rai, Dr. Jodhpe was present, and Dr. Sunil Agarg has also participated. Now, the main focus is on health promotion through different setting, the multi-sectoral participation, monitoring and evaluation, and this front of pack labeling is an important component of this campaign. We as a organization has a conflict of interest policy. And I think this is from the very beginning, we have this type of policy. It is there on our website, and we have, no engagement policy, that World Density Federation does not engage technically or accept funding or sponsorship from food and beverage industries, alcohol industry, tobacco industry, organization contributing to environment degradation and producing toxic chemical, water and air pollution. And I am happy to share with you, for the last 7 years of its existence, we have never taken any penny from such type of organizations. Now, advocacy is very important. I am giving you an example of this glyphosate, which is a pesticide, and it is also by the name of Roundup. It is a weedicide which is used very commonly in Punjab and is also a carcinogen. This is rampantly being used all over the country. But in Punjab, we took up this with the Punjab Farmer and Welfare Commission. And they invited us. And you can see this gentleman, he's Mr. Ajay Veer Singh Jakhad, who is the chairman of the Farmer Commission of Punjab, where we made a presentation that glyphosate is a carcinogen and should not be used in the state. And, Mr. Jakhad promised that, and within 6 months, this pesticide was banned in the states. So what I'm trying to make is that strong advocacy is required, and you have to go out of the way to influence the policymaker, and same is required for front of pack leveling. Another issue, which is very important is there is a big problem of adulteration of milk and milk product in the country. Whatever we are producing in our country, almost 5 times we are selling. So from where this, other milk, which is how this supply and demand is being taken care of. There is so much spurious milk in the country and also in Punjab. So this is again an advocacy meeting with the milk and the milk product, which we have with the Farmer Commission of Punjab. And we came up with a plan of action, including setting of the district-based laboratories to test the milk and the milk product so that we ensure the quality. Now, there are certain countries which have moved forward, and I think Thailand is one country which has done very good as far as Southeast Asia is concerned. I had the opportunity to review their program, and they have implemented mandatory nutrient content labeling since 2007. And they have come up with now the traffic light nutritional labeling system that uses red, amber, and green color. Red indicate, so this green indicators are for healthier foods, and red indicator for food which are not of, good quality or having bad for health. Similarly, Sri Lanka is doing very well. They have also this traffic light system in food safety, and they have red, yellow, green colors depending upon the content of the nutrient. And what was the effect of this, when they were introduced in Sri Lanka? There was a reduction of sugar level in many beverages within a short period of time, raised awareness among the public, and also industry took the new initiatives. Chile, I think they have also introduced this. I think previous speaker, Dr. Sunila, also covered. I will not go into detail of this. Now, what are the challenges? We do not have a clear-cut regulatory framework or any law. In fact, these regulations we are debating for the last 10 years. And in fact, I can say that while I was in WHO in 2010, the first project which was awarded to the NIN to study the front of pack labeling in India. and Dr. Sunila has also mentioned. And during one of the workshop, I had a opportunity to, interact with the food industry cartel. They are very smart people. I think, I don't know how many of you they have worked with the food industry. They are bullying, basically. They have a very financial, stakes in this. They spend a lot of money on advertising, and even they start, putting a lot of pressure, and they were registering a lot. So it's a very strong industry like tobacco with which you have to work. And that's why in the last 10 years, we could not have this even notification of this front of pack labeling in the country. Then lack of awareness among the consumer. This is very important. Unless there is a public pressure, the government will not come forward. False labeling is an important issue. There are limited analytical facilities. When we are talking about food, I'm also talking about the harmful chemicals, that is the heavy metals and the pesticide which are there. And we are nowhere near that having such type of facility. Diversity in the existing system, getting the food industry to comply, it's a big issue because this food industry is so strong that unless you have a strong regulation, you may not be able to implement such type of FOPL. And there is India diversity in the language, high literacy. So, whatever we are coming up, that is also very important. And for a country like us, although FSI has decided something else, but I think this traffic light signaling is quite relevant for a country where there is a lot of illiteracy. Now, to summarize my presentation, considering the constant increase in NCDs and the related death in the country, it is important that the FSI notifies the FOPL regulations soon. We are doing a big damage to the health of the people of country if we are not doing at the earliest. There should be an implementation framework and roadmap. That is very, very important. We have many things, and but the Prime Minister also says we have good policies, but we are poor implementer. And I'm sure here a strong implementation framework and roadmap is required. FOL is meant for consumer understanding. So this is very relevant for our country. It must be simple and understandable to the people. We, as a professional association, I will urge upon Madam Sunila Garg, Dr. Sanjay Rai, and other people sitting in this audience. It is not only giving lectures, but we have to come on the roads as activists, as a professional association to take forward this agenda. And I may advocate that even one-day meeting on Jantar Mantar on this topic would be a worthwhile exercise. So joint advocacy by all professional association, World NCD Federation already have a sort of a work together, and there should be a joint call for action to take this issue of FOPL on, head on, and also get it notified and implemented in the country. So this is all which I wanted to share. I'm happy to share that we have 7th Foundation Day International CME of World NCD Federation on sustainable development, health and wellness. This is the theme for this year. It is on 7th March, and we have the theme sustainable agriculture, health and wellness. Because unless we have this sustainable agriculture, we have food safety issues in the forefront, and also this chemical toxicity issues, which are very, very relevant for us. We may not be moved forward. So this is agriculture is a very important social determinant of health. And this is perhaps first time where agriculture expert and health experts are coming together. It is on 7th March, and the last date of registration is 28th February 22. And I invite all of you to register for this meeting and listen to the experts which are talking, also including the front of back level. So thank you very much for your patient hearing. I'll be very happy to take any question if it is there.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Thakur, for nicely presentation and your deliberations. Since it's already late, we can take one or two questions. Comment. You want to say something? Okay, I think there is no question or comments. So I thank you, Professor Thakur, for a nice presentation. It was nicely conveyed that associations should come forward. Professor Sanjay Rai has already told that IPHA and IAPSM had jointly signed and given it to Health Minister, Government of India. But definitely more effort is needed since food industries, as you told, are very powerful. So we have all academic associations and institutions should come forward and take the message seriously. It can change the political commitment and ultimately the program outcome. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. CM Singh. And I think we all should come together and fight this battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. CM Singh and Dr. JS Thakur for joining. And now I will, for the next session on findings from National Survey result on FOPL population perspective, I would request chairpersons, Dr. Farhad Akhtar Zaman, additional professor and head of the department, Community Medicine and Family Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Guwahati, Assam. I would like to request Dr. S.M. Salim Khan, Professor and Head Department of Community Medicine, Government Medical College, Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. I would request Dr. Pankaj Bhardwaj, Additional Professor, Department of Community Medicine and Family Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Dr. Rashmi Kundapur, Additional Professor, Department of Community and Family Medicine, AIMS, Bibinagar, Telangana. Dr. Himanshi Bhattacharya, Associate Professor, Department of Community Medicine and Family Medicine, AIMS, Guwahati, Assam. And Dr. Pradeep Agarwal, Associate Professor, Department of Community and Family Medicines, AIMS, Rishikesh.
Yeah. No, I'm just taking it. A very good evening to everyone. A respected chairperson, respected delegates. We are not four, we are representing Pan India, North, South, East, West. And we are really thankful for giving this opportunity to present the small brief results of the survey which we have done in Pan India. Thank you, ma'am.
As it has been said, it is not me presenting, it's all over the people who have done the survey, just presenting across you all, taking you all across what the survey says. And I'm here as only a face which is presenting, and the whole body is all over the country here, which you can say. There's a knowledge, attitude, perception study on the front of packaged labels in India. The whole collaborators of FOPL have done this. All through you'll have heard about what's about the scientific process, what has gone into. So the evidence highlights foods and beverages providing energy high in added sugars, sodium, saturated fat, and any other added trans fat, which are referred to as nutrients of concern, have determined impact on health. This has been known. Excessive consumption of these unhealthy foods and beverages is one of the key causes of obesity and increased risk of cancer, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and premature death. All of us again know about it. Excessive intake of these nutrients is largely driven by widespread availability, affordability, and promotion of processed and ultra processed foods and beverages that are excessive sugars, fats, and sodium. So the study sites for these, which are the partner institutes, where AIMS Rishikesh, AIMS Kalyani, AIMS Deoghar, AIMS Bhubaneswar, AIMS Guwahati, Mangalagiri, PGMR Chandigarh, AIMS Delhi, Jodhpur, Gorakhpur, Batinda, Bibinagar, SKIMS Jammu and Kashmir, SBMS Maharashtra and Odisha, CAG Tamil Nadu. So we had all the pan-India people who had been working with us as collaborators who worked for this study. It was a multi-centric study in different states of India. conducted under administrative control of premier medical institutes of respective state. So prospective multicentric cross-sectional study, sampling method was purposive sampling because it's a physical questionnaire-based survey. We looked into the adult who are the consumers. A pre-tested, semi-structured, multilingual questionnaire was administered to the population. Analysis was conducted using SPSS. A question. Yeah.
So this is a 20 questions. They were there in this questionnaire, and we would like Dr. Pradeep to help us out in disseminating this questionnaire to the audience to have a look on what were the questions which were there.
Yeah. So not telling about it, it was on details, shopping related behavior, knowledge regarding food package, labeling, attitude regarding food package, perception of consumer towards FOP label design. So that was the whole thing. The questionnaire has been with you all. And the results, this was at the multilingual changed and worked on into the state as and the count and percentage. If you look into Andhra Pradesh 102, Assam 151 and 7.5%, 11% of Maharashtra, 16% represented. So there was a larger aspect from the south which represented, and 13% Telangana, 11% in the large percentage, which you will see in the future also, seeing that a large percentage of south. So the males, normally whenever there is an, as you know, the respondents were 2025 and 62% were males, 37% were females. Most of them were at the age of 18 to 29 years. The most one which we take into as the youth of today, where majority of them were there. So that, but there were representation from all other parts also. This is what I would want to say. The South, there was a 39.6%, whereas 29.7% was also from North India. Of course, East and West, we had a bit of less, but other than that, it was. Urban accounted more. That is because most of the premier institutes were located in the urban area, and that's how the monitoring was with the institutions, and that's how we had more of urban population than the rural population, though we had. This is very interesting to note that we had the level of education, most of them were educated. Why I'm talking about this is FOPL. So uneducated people just go and buy it. They do not know what to read, how to read is not the question. So there were educated people, and 46% of them were at the degree level. So that's very, very important to be noted. And we had very less of illiterate to say that. And employment status, if you look into, if you say students by themselves only take, it doesn't mean that. If you see the self-employed and employed, were also in the major contributors as compared to the students, and unemployed were also their part of the surveys. Monthly household income, another interesting point to be noted there is, though we have the major, we say that high income people only consume, but it is not true. The survey had 20.5% of the people who were with high income, whereas we have 39.8% people with 15 to 50 and 26. So we had all ranges of people, and now we'll come to know what is the consumption and what happens to this in all the. Do you consume packaged foods and beverages? If you see that 91.3% in all through the different income, different education take it, and only 8.7% said no. Now, this results is based on the people of 91% who said yes. Yes, these are in numbers. I would want to say this is not percentages. These are in numbers. And you can see exactly that namkeen and biscuits are the ones which are eaten daily. Majority of the people eat it daily. Whereas other things, what we were saying, noodles, pasta, or beverages are taken once in a month, majority of the people. Though some of them take it, but the common one, namkeens and biscuits, are being taken every day. So that's very important to be noted in this slide. Of course, you can see most of the other things. And 94% of the people said that they know that it comes with a labeling. Means that is an awareness that there is a labeling. So do they serve any purpose? They said, majority said yes. And where was it present? Those who said yes, they know they come. This looks very interesting to see that though 50 and above % felt that it was in the back, but many others did not exactly know where it was. So they know it is present. They know that it will be of value, but still they were not able to identify it. Now, this is the point all of you all have to look into. So what does it contain? Most of them were educated. If you look into, most of them were educated. And when we said that, what do the information contain? Majority of them looked at as a related manufacturing and expiry date. That was the only major concern to the people. Of course, 64% said nutritional information and how to use and prepare and other things were there. But majority was on this. This is a multiple questions being answered. So the percentages does not account to 100. Why do you buy? Recently, somebody was telling about, the earlier one said about the taste and how do we have to replace, but look into, as usual, it is not the cheapness which is giving them the opportunity, but it is the ready to eat. According to the consumer, it is ready to eat, easily available and tasty. So 3 things add on, and majority of them, it is the ready to eat, which was the concern which was taken. Do you think it is healthy? And all of them felt it is healthy. 58% had a perception that it was healthy, whereas 33% felt it is no, but still they consumed it. And when asked that if there was high sugar or fat, what they do, then majority of them had an answer of heart, and other things, of course, came in heart, and cancer also came into. So it was not that there was no awareness, but the attitude wasn't towards no off front of package label. It wasn't not to take. So they were taking it. So the point now is to address not the knowledge, but the attitude. Do you find nutritional labeling information helpful? Majority of them felt, 87% felt yes. So this is the perception, consumption in numbers. I would just want to put up in a table with percentages. The multiple traffic light one, and the second one is about the WL, which talks about how it is weightage, and that caused the majority quickly understandable, easy to recognize, like to see this food on products, help to choose the healthier food. Majority of them felt that only. This is very important to know that type of what are about this, how are these packages will be the next speaker speaking about you in detail, and the perception of the people. You can go and see into the questionnaire also. It is given to them, shown to them, and asked which do you find as much. It takes a little more time for the candidates to read about it and give, and the answers were given on this to say that majority of them lied here. So will be helpful? Will it be helpful? Majority felt yes, they were helpful. So in conclusion, FOPL should be mandatory on all packed foods. What we say, 95% of the population have consumed packed foods. 87% find nutritional labeling helpful in packed foods. 93% of the consumers said FOP labels will be helpful to convey the nutritional information. Warning labels, that is WL, are quicker to understand, easy to recognize, and helps buying healthier food products among all the other labels. So it's very important. How should we put it up? As by the consumer's way is, they say that warning labels makes them easy to be understood. Yeah, thank you. That's for us, from all of us around as a collaborators.
Thank you so much for being on time. Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, Dr. Pankaj, Dr. Himasri, myself and my co-chair, Dr. Salim. We both were involved in this project. What I think that there are various stakeholders in the whole process of creating a ecosystem. We need to create a whole ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, all the stakeholders need to be involved directly or indirectly. One is the user. So they are Janta Janardhan, they are our user. They are a very important stakeholder. And without knowing the feel of the people, the perception, we cannot just go ahead with the other stakeholders. I mean, the providers, the industry, then influencer, people like us for advocacy, and ultimately the governance. So I think it's very important that we take into account all the stakeholders. And one of the stepping stone of this survey was that first stakeholder, that is the users, the population, what is their feel, how they feel. The last one, that question number 19 about FOPL design, what I feel that when somebody does not understand मतलब मुझे पता ही नहीं है, हैव यू एवर हर्ड अबाउट HIV एड्स? नो, तो आगे का क्वेश्चन बनता ही नहीं है। यहाँ पे हमने ऐसा नहीं किया, वी हैव नॉट डन लाइक दैट, बट what I felt while doing the interview, I myself have been involved. जब पता ही नहीं है तो चलो ये अच्छा दिख रहा है, giving it. So we do not get the correct result because the whole system, they are not aware at all, not aware. In fact, intellectuals, the academicians, the influencers, the other stakeholder, we ourselves also not that much aware कि कौन सा अच्छा होगा design FOPL. So we need to do a lot involving all the stakeholders, and it is just the beginning. So from my side, that much I would like Dr. Salim to add.
Thank you, Dr. Farhan, and thank you the team for conducting this good survey. And I think this is the beginning of the pan-India activities, and I suggest that we should move ahead with the involvement of schools to have similar type of studies, because they are the main stakeholders. We see during especially COVID times, all our children had turned obese, and they have been binging on these junk foods, and we need to assess their involvement, and later on we can use them as champions for educating FOPL. So I think there is less time for next from, so we'll call it a day. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot to all the chairpersons and the resource faculty. And now I would request all the present dignitaries to come on the stage for the photograph. Yeah.
जगह कम है क्या?
चलिए चलिए, कहाँ गया यार वो फोटोग्राफर? फोटोग्राफर कहाँ है? अरे कर दिल्ली से आके ऊपर आके बोलो ऐसे करो ऐसे करो।
अंकुर अंकुर सेल्फी सेल्फी
अरे मैं उसके साथ ले नहीं है अभी ना क्या है ट्रेन पे होगा
आगे
लॉजिस्टिक रिग्रेशन वगैरह बहुत कुछ लग रहा है
Photo frame, photo frame. I'll give a photo frame.
इसको नीचे रखिए ना, कमरसन दिख रहा है। सामने लगा सकते हैं। पोस्टर
एक रोड यहाँ बना लेते हैं लेवल ले रहे हो।
अभी keeping the time as a key priority, I would like to announce for the next session. The speaker for the session is Professor Arun Gupta, sir. And I would like to request the chairperson for the same, Paramita Madam, to kindly chair the session. And along with Paramita Madam, I would like to request HP Sachdev, sir. Yeah. Thanks. Sir. I'm sorry. सर ये अभी कर सर प्रेजेंटेशन हाँ सर आप भी हाँ
नहीं नहीं अरुण गुप्ता
हाँ उसके बाद इसको शेयर कर ठीक कर दिया नाम का अनाउंस हाँ कर दिया अनाउंस Hello, friends. Good evening, and thank you very much, both NAMS and the AIMS faculty for giving me this opportunity to talk. I'm going to talk quickly on this. Couple of people have mentioned about ultra-processed food since morning, but I think I'll be getting a little more detail on that, why this is a bigger elephant in the room. Even though we tackle with HFSS, we still don't tackle with unhealthy foods if we do not take care of this. Now, day before yesterday, I was boarding a train and this boy just came, sat next to me, and what he had in his hand was a Coke bottle and a ultra-processed cake he was eating. That shows the commonality of food which we tend to eat. The young boy, and that's how the food system is changing in this country and changing very rapidly. So I'll talk about this, and we know the consumption is rising. And what I'm going to share with you that mere nutrient content determines if the food product is healthy or not. That's the current paradigm. Currently we're talking about this. Food processing itself, which is an important health implication, is not considered for the purpose of telling people that this could be bad. A couple of people did deal with this, but why it is done so? So it's critical that we do not miss this out. And what are the implications on policy? Most of the people have said, asking for something which I think we all agree. There doesn't seem to be any disagreement on that. So what is ultra processed food itself? Now, very quickly, this is a most acceptable definition, but I'll go a little simpler on this. But BMJ recently published an opinion piece that these food have been chemically or physically transformed using industrial process. So that's key element is your food has gone through the industrial processing, made package, ready to eat, contains more than 5 ingredients. So if your package has more than 5 ingredients, consider it is ultra processed, have a long shelf life. Now the last is the most important, which has a health implication, is the additives and flavors, emulsifiers, stabilizers and whatnots. These are the elements which are not considered for being informed to public that they are harmful. So that's the key of what I am going to say. I will not get into the detail short of time, but Brazilian team 10 years back, Brazil noted their overall country consumption of the sugar went down, obesity was going up. So what they were surprised, what has happened? So that's when the team in University of Sao Paulo sat down, discussed and found this new definition called NOVA means new definition, new classification of food into 4 groups, which essentially says the first one is the group 1 is unprocessed, which is like vegetables, fruits and all. The culinary ingredients, like we cook food with masalas and all, becomes the next level. And the third is the processed food, from where the harm starts. But all the process is not bad. You should also be aware. For example, if you have peas can, you have pineapple can, but there might be sugar or salt around them. So but food is still visible. You can see there is food in that can. Now the 4th category is ultra processed. These are formulations, food products. It's not real food, where you cannot see food inside the packet. You only see the product. So that's how they defined, and you can identify the health harm actually increases the moment the processing increases. So the more the processing, more the health harm. And the more the consumption of processed food, more is the health harm. So there is enough evidence on the negative impact on human health. Last year alone, in 2021, 367 papers are published on this, which is more than 1 a day on an average. So I've just picked a few of them, which have been the latest ones, but I will not get into the details. But I'll tell you the website where you can see all this paper. This one is critically important, which first determined a RCT, which determined that ultra-processed food or non-processed food, if you give ad libitum to two groups of people, they found after 15 days, the people who were eating ultra-processed food, so this was conducted and the people were actually put in hospital and the trial was conducted. And they gained 900 grams, though the calories, the fats, the sugar, everything were matched. But they were allowed to eat as much as they like to eat. So that's where the conclusion of this came, that it actually adds to overeating, overconsumption, which leads to further obesity and non-communicable diseases. So it's independent of the nutrient and negatively impacts health of the people. So that was the conclusion of this paper. Then you have another evidence saying that it changes. This was published just a few days back, said how ultra-processed food actually affects your brain and turns into a bad eating behavior. Then there is an evidence now, which is clearly available, that if you remove the effect of sugar, salt, and fat, this ultra processing itself is harmful. So these are the papers which have been published. Such another one, which is a review of 37 cohort studies, again showing the findings suggest adverse consequences of UPF are independent of dietary quality or pattern, questioning the utility of reformulation. I will remind Sanjay at this point of time, you know, this is an industry wanted to reformulate, but if a product is reformulated, for example, you reduce sugar from 20 to 10% even, you will get a green signal, but the food still remains ultra processed. So that's the point of that. I personally would not ever recommend reformulation as a key strategy to reduce, but let people reduce, but call it harmful. So again, the meta-analysis from several observational studies also published in 20. So in terms of chronic non-communicable diseases, a lot of evidence. The last one, which I just picked up from the BMJ commentary, which is actually suggesting how do you include identifying ultra-processed foods in the label also. So that's one which is a call given, that warning on foods that are not really ultra-processed foods. So that's the call. BMJ's commentary very recently has been published. So this is a website, bpni.org/ultra-processed food. You can find all these papers. They are updated on a regular basis. All the evidence as well as the advocacy papers are present on this website. So what are the mechanisms which actually lead to why ultra-processed foods are harmful? So one is the overconsumption, I've already showed. Then the increase, the hyperpalatability, which is important to understand that it affects through the brain and the centers which are satiety centers. So that where the high comes. Food matrix degraded. So food matrix is degraded. Food is reduced to some elements, and then they are processed, put into a product. Reduced fiber. So they remove the fiber and use that. So it's all non-core foods, which are cosmetic additives, phthalates in the packing. They have been known to affect metabolic dysfunction and the microbiome. These are the proposed hypotheses for health harms due to ultra-processed foods. So what are the policy implications? Policy should reflect reduction of UPFs in terms of and a regular measurement of how much is being, as the survey shows. A lot of people are consuming, most of these foods are ultra-processed foods. It should be defined. Currently, the Food Safety Authority or any other law does not define what is an ultra-processed food. So FSSAI has asked us to submit a concept note. We have done so to request them to define ultra-processed foods. And these are aggressively marketed. Therefore, ban on marketing, it needs to be on the table. I think most of the speakers right from the beginning have indicated ban on marketing, especially targeted to children. Now, this is how NOVA classification helps. Now, this is a ultra-processed food, but in the scoring, if it is a score, it gets grade A, which means healthy food, right? And when you get into the classification NOVA, it says it's grade NOVA 4. So this is the so if health star rating is accepted and this food will get a 4 or 5 star, but the NOVA will tell that it's a grade 4, which is unhealthy food. So that's the difference between all these foods. You say Kellogg's, these chocolates, the chiselings, these ultra processed foods, whether Cokes or these products for kids. These are all ultra processed foods, widely advertised, and none of them tell you on the TV that this food has high in sugar or fat. So the labels only are not going to matter if this is continued, because the positive nutrient thing will allow companies to market their products. So that's not going to help. Now, this is the suggestion given by the BMJ's commentary recently, that clear information on the point of purchase should have this label, a warning label, high in salt, sugar, or saturated fat, but also add a square called this is ultra processed. So that it is not escaped. Even if they are not high in sugar, salt, it will be labeled as ultra processed, which is also unhealthy. So marketing restrictions have proved useful. This paper was published just last week, that they have been found to be reducing the consumption of ultra processed beverages, so that it's important to keep the marketing regulations and call for a legislation to end marketing on the table. So this study finds an association between the implementation of restriction on outdoor HFSS advertising and relative reduction in energy, sugar, and fat purchased from HFSS products. These findings provide support for policies that restrict advertising as a tool to reduce the purchase of ultra processed foods. Thank you so much for your kind attention. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Arun Gupta, sir, for a very lucid presentation on a less traversed domain of ultra processed food. Like we have talked about and heard about raising awareness and all, and I think regulatory approach should also be considered. And since FSSAI is a regulatory body, and what we can do is we can have a Eat Right campus in our institute. So, and it has a checklist, and FSSAI may be told to introduce this component of nutrition labeling into their checklist, because as of now it doesn't contain the this nutrition profile model.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Arun, for raising a issue which is there in the narratives with the regulator. I have been in the FSSAI panels and at other places. I think an argument which we people tend to generally talk about is obesity, which is hugely underestimating the magnitude of the problem. In the recent comprehensive national nutrition survey done in 5 to 18 years of children throughout the whole country, rich, poor, rural, and urban, more than half, I repeat, more than half of children had metabolic obesity, which means dysglycemia or dyslipidemia by the international standards. So we should be talking of metabolic parameters, and at a tender age of children. You can imagine if this goes on, this is going to what harm it is going to cause. This is all published peer-reviewed information on a credible journal. Point number 2 that I wish to say is that if you want to educate the public, there are 2 ways. You can show that a food is good, better, or best, versus this is a food that they should stay away from. So we should be, our idea here is not to eliminate the industry, but to reduce or substantially halt the consumption. I also like to take chocolate sometime, a cake or a processed food once in a while. Is the reduction which is important. And in this context, what the FSSAI is veering towards or has been proposed as the health star rating is never going to work. It is a warning which has to be there. You can put 2-3 components like flaxseed or a few micronutrients out there, and that rating will go up while it may be high in fats or salts, and the warning will never be there. The consumer is being taken for a ride there. So I think the narrative of what we say should focus on these aspects, and these are the points I want to take. We are already running
Thank you.
late. And ultra process is one easy thing which Arun has said can help identify. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Arun, Dr. Sachdev, Dr. Paramita. And after the completion of all these technical sessions, may I now request the guest of honor for the address, Ms. Vandana Shah, and the chairpersons for the session would be Dr. Shashikant, Head of the Department, Center for Community Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and Dr. Rakesh Kakkar, Professor and Head, Department of Community and Family Medicine, AIIMS, Bhatinda.
So good afternoon, distinguished guests, eminent chairperson. As the guest of honor and sitting among so many eminent nutritionists, I will sort of use a different story to both encourage and provide hope as we want to implement a strong FOPL in India. So, I want to derive from the story that we have with tobacco pack warnings. So in India, the pack warning story, as our first technical speaker today, Amit Khurana from CSC shared, this is a 10-year battle that we are facing in FOPL. So I think similarly on tobacco, the journey of the pack warning started all the way in 2009 when India proposed some, tough warnings, which was still, relative to the global scenario, I would say moderate warnings. And the level of interest from the industry and the influence on the government resulted in a group of ministers which are called upon for matters of national interest being formed at the cabinet level. So at that point, very similar to what we saw with FOPL, the entire process was aborted. And, and we actually got some really weak warnings on one side of tobacco packs, 40%, which gave India the distinguished rank of being 163rd in the world. So pretty much, very much at the bottom. So fast forward, the first few months of the Modi government in 2014, when Dr. Harshvardhan became the health minister, he was very motivated to take India's tobacco rankings to the very top. And I remember, meeting with him in his first 2 or 3 weeks. He happened to be in Washington, DC, and he asked me and our global president, who is an eminent tobacco control expert, Matt Myers, that what could he do to put India on the world map? So one of the key measures that India was lacking, and we suggested, is that India is 163rd in the world on tobacco pack warnings. And you have this unique opportunity to take India to number 1 by implementing maybe 60 to 70%. And for once, we had someone with a bold vision. He came back home and said, why should I do 60 to 70%? I want to go bigger. He actually proposed an 80 to 85% warning. And from what I understand, all of the experts, even in India, told him that that's too bold. you will face a lot of pushback from industry. I think globally also we were scared about the repercussion. And I want to say that it was really interesting because, he did announce the pack warnings in October of 2014. And then he was moved to another ministry. And all of 2015, there was huge industry pushback. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of litigation. At one point, we have over 100 lawsuits that civil society and government were defending on this regulation. But India then did implement in 2016 the 85% pack warnings, taking India from 163rd straight to number 1 in the world. And I want to say that this was huge, not just for India, but it was a race to the top. So for once, India's public health position helped us create a race to the top. I remember sharing the India regulation with countries in the region, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. Everybody wanted to actually do better. Pakistan announced 85%. They've still just stuck at 60% because that got, caught up in litigation. Nepal, which was already at a good percentage, went up to 90%. And globally, India got a lot of recognition. The other point I want to emphasize is this pack warning, just like FOPL, comes with a lot of science. It impacts consumer behavior. It results in prevalence declines. So 2 years later, when we conducted the Global Adult Tobacco Survey, which is sort of the largest public health survey conducted in the world by the Indian government in partnership with CDC, we saw dramatic prevalence declines. I think all of us, even working on tobacco control around the world, were really caught by surprise, which is a good place to be in public health, where we saw a 17% prevalence decline in tobacco use. An overall decline. And I want to share that there was a very interesting segment that came from pack warnings. So in 2010, when India had those 40% very weak warnings on one side, there was clearly, it showed that there was very low intent to quit as a result of the pack warnings. We purposely had these very specific questions. And if you saw that the intent to quit, went up significantly to 61% on cigarettes, even on BDs, where the pack warnings, because of the nature of the pack, was poorly implemented. The intent to quit because of these pack warnings was so high. And so I think there was clear correlation. So I think the industry argument was don't implement pack warnings on tobacco because they don't work. So why were they fighting it so hard? And the evidence spoke for itself. So I think the whole idea that we're talking about today is really statutory warnings for packaged foods. I don't want to repeat all this data, but clearly what we are talking about is that packaged food has 3 key, nutrients of concern: sugar, salt, and fat. And those are now the NCD impact of those and the deaths caused by those 3 is equivalent to the deaths caused by tobacco. So what we're talking about, which is where our messaging has to be very clear, is to have a warning label. Interestingly, the label that makes sense to actually address this NCD crisis is called a warning label, which is what the tobacco warning labels are called. And so what we're talking about is not having a mixed message with positive and negative nutrients. We're not trying to tell you that if you have high salt and high fat, but if you have flax seeds and fiber, you have what's called a mixed message. The consumer is confused and there is no public health impact, which is why Australia, New Zealand, the data is there, that health star ratings, Nutri-Score, they don't change consumer behavior, nor do they lead to reformulation. Again, I don't want to repeat the slides. The NCD crisis caused by, ultra processed foods, you see the data, this is global data, a real aggressive growth in ultra processed foods. We have, Dr. Arun Gupta before me who talked about it at length. So really we have a huge growth, which is obviously as a developing economy moving towards greater development, we're just going to see that trajectory. and like it as, or, as we may, we're not going to go back to 100% home cooked meals. People will be, obviously offering noodles, kids will be eating more packaged food. The reality is we want to shift these foods, and that is the entire global movement towards being healthier. So the whole cry for today, I want to really focus on this one slide because I think a lot has been said about FOPL. So what really is the purpose of FOPL? So if we all collectively as nutritionists, medical health experts look back, there's sort of three core purposes of front of package labeling, sort of really to enhance consumer food selection. We know based on evidence globally that a consumer spends 6 to 10 minutes making a decision on a food. So are we going to be able to clearly tell him in those 6 to 10 seconds, is this food good for you? And especially those three ingredients of concern that are related to all NCDs. So if I have hypertension and I see a clear sign on a packet of pistachio that says it's high in salt, I know it's not for me. But if it has a red, green, and yellow symbol because it has high fiber, because pistachio has high fiber or high protein or some omega-3, I am confused. I will buy that pistachio and I am not reducing the NCD burden, which is the whole goal. The second one, which we are finding in countries that actually have clear labels that result in consumer making choices based on these nutrients of concern, is reformulation. And the reformulation will happen because if those products have the salt label and nobody's buying that, it actually will cause the companies to reformulate. And the biggest point to remind you is that it's not reformulation for one salted cashew maker. Every salted cashew maker in the market will have to reformulate because none of them want the high in salt or the high in fat label. The other piece is that it really helps sort of really create the environment in terms of healthy buying for foods, beverages, for assisting not just those who are shopping personal use, but really there's a huge, especially a country like India, where you have a huge sort of school program. There's a lot of other government schemes. All of those can have those labels as a guide as to what is allowed to be bought in those programs. Again, this map has been shown. You have countries that are moving towards clearly mandatory warning labels, and that's where all the evidence is building up. So clearly, I don't want to belabor my time, but this is sort of the label that is emerging with the best evidence to achieve the stated goals of an effective FOPL to change consumer behavior and, reduce NCDs. So the Chile study has been beaten to death. So I want to just kind of stop and say that the whole idea of FOPL, and why I want to say that I have worked now in India for 12 years. I've never seen such a distinguished gathering, of so many eminent leaders, nutritionists, public health leaders, medical leaders come together. I want to say the pack warning fights on tobacco, we just had it was just civil society in India, a handful of oncologists that actually fought that battle and did eventually win and were able to take on the tobacco industry, which is very well organized, very well funded, with very, very deep roots within government. I want to say the food industry, the advantages, they are very well funded, but it is a relatively new industry. So they're not as organized in terms of the lobbying that we're seeing. And I think that the might that you all represent, I think to really point out to policymakers, if, individually, collectively, in every forum that each one of you has, that effective warning labels, as which has proven to be very effective in addressing India's NCD crisis. And I want to say that a confusing label like health star rating would be a huge step back. A huge step back, not just for India, but the rest of the world. Because I want to say FOPL is a very young policy. You have 10 to 12 countries that have actually adopted FOPL. So just as when India did it right on warning labels, and as a global health person, I was able to run around the world and share that example. I shared the India pack warning story in so many forums with actually so many health ministers and secretaries in other countries. I think India doing it wrong has a huge implication. not just for India and Indians, but for the rest of the world. Because I always say that India's pack warnings and India's e-cigarette legislation, which is another analogy which I got to share in a lot of global fora, and I was personally involved in helping the government develop, was something that we share and created a race to the top. If India does FOPL wrong and implements something like health star rating with the kinds of thresholds they are proposing that are 2 or 3 times of WHO zero, it would start what I call as a race to the bottom. So what we are responsible is not just for what will happen in India, because if India does it wrong, it sets an example and justifies bad behavior from other nations. So just as our regulators has cherry-picked on the worst example in the world on health star rating in Australia, which all the Australian nutritionists, and I'm sure, Dr. Sachdeva and Dr. Gupta can say that their colleagues in Australia want to, dump that system. They will speak out openly, are ready to dump that system, and our regulator has seen the data, has seen those voices, and they will cherry pick the system because it's out there. And that is Australia. So imagine the consequences in India choosing a wrong system. It has consequences for the rest of the world, especially in such a new, critical, cutting edge policy. So I just want to end there that, for me, seeing all of your faces, the leadership and sort of all of distinction you bring from your fields and your eminent organizations, I have hope that, we can carry this message that what India does will have a huge impact on the health, the NCD, the next, health surveys in India, but also for the rest of the world. We will set a new benchmark if we can do it right. And, the next set of surveys, and the data shifts very quickly. What's very heartening, I want to say that I never thought that at least 3 or 4 policies implemented on tobacco from 2013 to 2016 had such a large prevalence decline. That's the second largest prevalence decline recorded in the world in GATS, actually after Bangladesh. So this works. Public health works. If you put the right policies, implemented well, we can save lives in India and set the world in the right direction. So thank you. And I really want to thank the organizers for putting it together. A big thank you to AIMS, Rishikesh, and everyone who helped put it together. Thank you.
May I take this opportunity to invite the guest speaker to join us on the dais, please. And my friend and chair, Dr. Kakkad, will give his view, and then I've been asked to sum up and wrap up the today's session. So Dr. Kakkad.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, madam, for a very wonderful talk. From your this presentation, we came to know that changing a policy is not easy, and it is driven by the industries, and they try to influence the policy at different levels. So that is really a challenging thing to change the policy, and lot of efforts from public health experts and motivation and convincing is required for this. And if we can have an effective FOPL warning symbol on those packages, then people will be more happy and it will be easy for them to adopt. If it is complicated, then even after the policy change, it will be difficult to adopt. So that is very important. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to compliment the organizers to organize a national deliberation on such an important issue. It's incredible that within a short span of 3 hours, the experience that we have had by so many of the inspiring speakers who were knowledgeable about what they were talking. Just to look back, when I say what happened in 3 hours, there are 2 ways to look at it. One of them was suggested by Professor Vashne, to which we as a researchers are more comfortable to look at what we call IMRAD model, that's an introduction, method, results, and discussion. But at a more intuitive and at a gut feeling level, I just wanted to see it. How did it feel? I felt it was very well rounded. And I started with Dr. Shiv Sareen setting up why is it important, followed by Amit Khurana, who talked about various ways and means of looking at FOPL. Then it was taken up by Dr. Sunila Garg, who talked about relationship of packaged food or junk food, as he said, and NCDs. And then came Dr. Sanjay Rai, who was also the president of the IPHA, who talked about legislation not only on the supply side, but its effect on the demand side. So most of it we were discussing about the demand side, discretion of the buyer, but also could it have effect and influence the producer of the product by changing laws. And thereafter we had Dr. J.S. Thakur, who expanded the ambit of what we are talking. Apart from food, he also included chemicals and toxins, and he spoke about his experience and what it is all about. And he exhorted us to become a sort of health activist, to march from Jantar Mantar to Parliament. I forget where, but it was invited to march. And I think that was the area got expanded. And then we had, I forget who came next to him. I think Dr. Arun Gupta came, and the wonderful exposition of how unprocessed food, when it lands up, ultimately is ultra processed. So I looked at UPC and UPC both sounded, as far as the acronym was, then pretty much same, but they were at the two extremes of the range. So ultra processed food. And really it is eye-opening that we are virtually having one paper on that particular topic every day of the year in last 1 year. And that tells how engaged the world is about the area we are. And we also, I was privileged to have had heard your chief guest, who clearly put the analogy of what our experience has been in terms of tobacco control and how that experience can be leveraged to do what we are trying to do. And the key feature that she identified, and that's important to me at least, is that as yet, the food industry is not that well organized. It has the muscle power, no doubt about it. But the lobbying and the organized way in which it can influence, which was partially referred by Dr. Thakur also, that there is a strong lobby, which obviously there are vested interest, and we ought to take that into account while we are trying to formulate how to go about it. But there is a window opportunity in which, while our opposition is not that well organized as yet, could we be more quick-footed and do something about it? Experience has not been very good. I mean, we said that we have spent 10 years pursuing this issue, and yet it has not come to anywhere near fruition, or maybe even a start of it. And therefore, it would be a good idea to double our effort and try to achieve success in the small window that we may still have. And I think it has been an excellent exposition of various aspects of FOPL, and I was very privileged. And congratulations to all the speakers, and they're wonderful. And I did forget to name the India team from East, West, North, South, because I simply forgot to remember all the names. I asked Pradeep to remind me, and yet I didn't write them down, and because of my old age, my memory fails me. So I don't remember them all, but congratulations to that team as well. Thank you very much, organizer. It has been a wonderful day. Over to the master of ceremony.
I would like to thank all the dignitaries. And for vote of thanks, I would request Dr. Pradeep Agrawal to come on the dais, please.
Very good evening to everyone. First vote of thanks goes to the consumer, the key participant of this entire front of package labeling. Physically, virtually, we are able to acknowledge and generate the awareness among the consumer. And it is what we would like to re-emphasize as one of the objectives of this particular project. We are really very thankful to the National Academy of Medical Sciences, Honorable President Sir, Professor Sareen Sir, Officiating Secretary, and the master of this whole of the webinar come National Deliberation, the chairperson and the convener, Umesh Kapil Sir. A special round of applause for him. A special thanks to all the chairpersons and the speakers, especially the respected directors and the honorable directors who out of their busy schedule have their commitments and still they were able to make up for the front of package labeling national deliberation. Respected Madam Vandana Shah, the guest of honor, she have came all the way from the US and have been the supporter for this front of package labeling. Global Health Advocacy Incubator is the key initiator for this particular project in AIIMS Rishikesh. The key important player over here is Professor Arun Gupta. He have been running through this fight of front of package labeling since last 10 years. And his word of wisdom have enlightened us regarding the current status and the global policies regarding front of package labeling. Nonetheless, we are really very thankful to the team of the NAMS who have organized and taken up the pain to organize this event, especially my team, Mr. Arshdeep, Mr. Ankur, and a special thanks to Master of Ceremony, Madam. She is a well-known face, Ma'am Kiran Bhardwaj, and I hope now you must be remembering she is an anchor for the Total Health Doordarshan. On the request of Professor Umesh Kapil Sir, she came all the way for this natural cause of health, and she have agreed to be the Master of Ceremony. Special thanks to you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Kumar.
May I request Umesh Kapil Sir to be on the dais? Sir. सर सब कुछ आपसे पूछ के थोड़ी ना करेंगे, कुछ तो हमारे पास भी है. I request Shashikant sir to honor the
Well, thank you very much for all the participants, all the delegates, all the speakers, all the chairpersons. We had a wonderful sessions, and the summing up by Dr. Shashikant was really a treat. He summed up each and every activity, and we really enjoyed these sessions. And sometime way back in 2013, I was party to the development of FOPL in the country. Okay. And, but then I was lost in the other activities. So, but it's a difficult situation we are in, and their commercial interest, FOPL is not easy to get in. We may try our march, we may try our Jantar Mantar and so on and so forth. It's a difficult thing. And industry's bottom line is profits, and we may do whatever we want. Okay, but yes, an effort should be made. Like Dr. Arun Gupta is making effort for promotion of breastfeeding, fighting against all the big manufacturers of baby food products. But still, there is a hope. Let me put it that there's a hope. And we have to work with the government, we have to convince them. With these remarks, again, my most sincere thanks to all of you for coming over here. And as Dr. Sareen mentioned, if possible, you can utilize the NAMS platform for developing guidelines on different issues. We can have the best of the best scientists in the country come together, have our deliberations, and come out with the white paper, what should be done. And I can assure you on behalf of Academy, we are an academic institution. We are one of the arms of Government of India, right? We are always with all the scientists. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Please do join us for the dinner at 7 p.m., 6:30, 7 p.m. onwards. Please. Thank you.
Okay, I request everybody to come very fast for the last event, that is a memento distribution. And we start with respected Shashikant sir. Kakkar sir. Vashne sir. Salim sir. Salim sir. Sir, HPS Sajdev sir.
साथ साथ ही निपटा दें।
Arun Gupta sir. Paramita madam. Bhatia sir. Can I request Dr. Sudeep, please come up.
अरे वाह।
Dr. CM Singh, sir.
ये लो सर अब सर ने अपना
Dr. Sanjay Rai, sir. Dr. Sanjay Rai, sir. Next, Dr. Pankaj Bhardwaj, sir. Dr. Paramita Sengupta, ma'am. Dr. Rasmi Kundapur, ma'am.
That's what she's saying. कोई मुझसे तो पूछता ही नहीं था, मुझे कांटेक्ट करता है.
Dr. Om Prakash Bera. Sunila ma'am. Dr. Sunila Garg ma'am.
मैम रूम में है उसमें ना वो उनकी शायद मीटिंग चल रही है.
You please also come, Dr. Sanjay, you also come. It's want to start. Please come. He told me from Odisha. We have very nice.
I request especially for the spinal cord of the program, Dr. Sudeep. स्क्रीन बंद कर दो, स्क्रीन ब्लैक कर दो, स्क्रीन ब्लैक कर दो फिर बात करो.
Always remain permanent only in your life. One is the name of your parents, solid there in your life. You cannot change. The other name is the name of your institute.
And for the guest of honor, sir, ma'am.
आपको आपका
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We all invite you for a dinner and pre-dinner celebration at Sir C1/2, C2/15, All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences, Ansari Nagar, Rishikesh. Oh, sorry. I'm most welcome, sir. Most welcome. Most welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.